All right, Kingkillers, we're covering chapters 51 through 55 on this episode. We're going to welcome Fitz back after serving his one-episode ban for his previous deplorable behavior. Then we got a really good one for you here. We're going to dive into the fantastic scene where Kvothe and Fenton duel in Master Dal's class. We'll get our introduction to Auri, and I'll offer a theory about her. And we cover one of the baddest chapters ever written when Kvothe goes to the Aeolian and wins his talent pipes. You're also going to hear me question why we continue reading this series despite a glaring genetic flaw that runs rampant in it. I'll also tell you a story about a former drinking buddy of mine. And we bring more of the maturity and poetic word talk that you've come to love. So sit back and enjoy.
Welcome back, killers! And not to worry, because I, the fastidious and formidable Fitz, have foregone my fatherly faithfulness, focus, and function to offer favor to you fervent fans of fantastical fables with the fiery and utmost killer broadcast, Kingkiller podcast. So along here with Dandy Dan and Timid Timmy. How's your week, guys?
Went well, man.
Yeah, pretty good.
Well, how was your
it was fast.
Your sabbatical on from getting banned for a week?
It was fine. I have some notes for you guys, but you'll see it when the episode comes out. You'll hear the notes, so don't worry about that.
No, we crushed it. So that was the only note. Like, just nailed it, perfect. Like, that's pretty much the only notes that I can think of. Yeah, you could come up with some alliterations for awesome, amazing, you know, anything along those lines. You can just start throwing in a bunch of A words for
perfect. I'm sorry, did you say awesome and amazing as an alliteration?
No, like I'm saying, you can make alliterations off of those words. Jeez.
Oh, okay, I got you now. Well, I love alliteration, and I did not love the two of you together. I felt like there's a lot of room for growth, but if we're not growing, what are we doing, guys? We're declining. So, take another listen and see where I've put in my exclamation points and question marks. See what you think.
I don't think the lack of growth is declining. I think it's more like stagnant. But I don't think that was represented by the podcast by any means.
It's like a salmon.
It's like a
salmon.
Self-defense. I get it. You felt slighted. It's okay, but, just watch your P's and Q's, man.
Yeah, step up your game.
And your F's.
You can be a part of some fantastic, awesome episodes like 12.
Okay. You know what?
So this is Lucky 13.
Yeah.
Right on.
You guys want to
Friday the 13th.
Oh, it is?
Today's not the 13th.
No.
Wait, what?
It's Friday the 13th episode.
But someday somebody is going to be listening to this episode on a Friday the 13th and be like, what the fuck?
Yeah, man. Spooky,
do,
man.
Do, 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 do. All right, let's get in.
Is that Jaws? Was that a Jaws thing?
No, Twilight Zone.
Ah.
No. All right. You guys ready to kick this one off? The fans have been hungry for some actual in-depth insight, so let's get right on it. All right, well, starting off with chapter 51, which is called Tar and Tin, where Kvothe gives us a quick intro to Sigildry, as he's been invited to work with Kilvin at the fishery. Kvothe then tells us of his hiding spot at Mainz, where he's been practicing his lute. And as he's practicing, he hears some rustling and then an iron grate fall. He goes to investigate and he finds the iron grate, which he then notices has some sigildry on it. Or I guess runes. It has some runes on it. And he also finds runes, yes. My wife always makes fun of me the way I say that. Runes. Okay. Anyway.
Just ruined that whole part.
Very good, Dan. So anyway, he also finds an out of place apple, which I'm guessing belongs to Auri. But then the next day, Kvothe passes Kamar's test and begins studying sigildry under Minette, and that's where we leave off.
Yeah, we get right in the beginning. We get sigildry, and we learn how complex it can be, and how, like, on a lot of the complexities of it make it almost useless in many respects. Like, for when he goes through the long list of the different runes that you would need to make bricks stick together, he goes through this long thing. He's like, oh, and as you can see, it's a lot simpler just to use whatever mortar or whatever they use. And so what I like about that is it's similar with sympathy, where when he demonstrates how to light Master Hem's foot on fire, and he's talking about the candle being underneath his foot, and it would, it wouldn't burn him, but even with the sympathy, it would even do less than that. It shows the limitations of the magic. It demonstrates the limitations of it. Obviously, there's other uses for it. There's, things that make it very useful, but there are limitations as well. And you get demonstrated that with sigildry very well right here.
And, the more I'm reading this again, the more appreciation I have of him explaining the magic side of it. Like, not a lot of fantasy books or stories do that. You just, all of a sudden you have a wizard and his wand, and he can make a goat out of a monkey for no reason. You know what I mean? Like, he's got great explanation to it.
That's one of my favorite things about the series and what he does is that, most things that I've come across, there's magic and there's not a real explanation as to how it works, how it functions, and where the existence comes from. He ties all this down, and it's tied down in, like, it feels like something that would be possible in our world, because it feels like physics, and it feels like, engineering to a degree. And especially with the sigildry, I mean, because there's so much complexity to it. It's great, man. I mean, Rothfuss really, that's one of the main things that really attracted me to it initially, because when I hear, if it was introduced to me that, there's magic in the world, that kind of turns me off, frankly, when I'm going to read something. I'm not real into that idea. I like the idea of things that, things that are extra or supernatural to our world, but it's only really so interesting to me when it's kind of supplements or, helps emphasize what human beings are capable of, you know what I mean? And he does that here because he ties it down into our own reality, so it's easier to buy, it's easier to understand, or at least understand why it could exist in the world.
I like that he has both types of magic. He's got the unexplainable naming, shaping, which we don't really understand yet, we haven't heard enough about, but there are things in the world, like what Florian can do, what he can do with the name of the wind, or the name of different iron, stone, all that kind of stuff. But then there's also the mechanical magic as well that has, there is a grounding for it, an explanation how it can build up on each other. It has very specific limitations, and so you get both in this world. He doesn't just give you, the force. He gives you the force plus the more mechanical magic.
Yeah, there's a lot of nuance. Especially when you also bring in music, and then, the things that we don't fully understand with, like, the Ilish knots, and there's these supplementary ways where it becomes a larger body of potential. It's great, and it's super interesting because it just widens out even that world itself of how magic works in the world.
Yeah, I agree with you, Dan, about what you were saying last week about the when they start trying to explain the subtleties of the Force after a few episodes, how it loses its luster. In this one, though, I mean, in this series, though, I feel like the explained magic is done so well that it adds so much. You can just go in and start saying, well, I used a moment and it helped me stab this guy without any explanation. It's done so well, and it's so well thought up or invented that it's very enjoyable. And you're right, both ways, with the mysterious stuff, with the Elish knots and the naming and anything else to come. With the Fae, for instance, we don't know anything about how the Fae was created and all that. But so you still have that, but I do enjoy the explanation behind Sigildry and sympathy.
And a lot of it is how you start off. Like if he had started off with sympathy, and like Abinthy had no idea how he was doing what he was doing, or he couldn't even explain it, and it just seemed as fantastical magic where it didn't seem like there was any limitations. And then after all that, then you start adding in explanations after the fact, like in book 2 or something. Yeah. And then they start bringing in like the mathematics and all that shit. It would lose something. Or if you did with naming, where all of a sudden, like now, like they could point to mathematical formulas to explain naming, it would lose something. But when you started off with this is, you build it from the ground up, then it works. But if you do it the opposite way, you start with the fantastical, and then you slowly start building it back towards the foundation. I don't think it works very well if you do it in reverse.
Yeah, not for the audience. I mean, that's like imagining he starts out in the Fae. That's how you open the book. It'd be like, what? Like, what? You wouldn't be able to grasp most of what's happening. It's hard enough to grasp it, when we get there, But yeah, I mean, we've said that plenty of times, that it's very artfully done. It's very thoughtful the way he builds these things towards. And he does that in so many ways. I mean, there's plenty of examples here where he kind of does that little bit of like patchwork, little breadcrumbs leading into what we're going to see later. And it just plants it in your mind. It's great.
And you get how brilliant he is compared to other students, because when he's talking about learning all the runes, there was 197 of them. And so it's like learning a new language, except there were nearly 200 unfamiliar letters, and you had to invent your own words a lot of the time. And so he said most students, it would take them a month, and for him, it took him like 7 days. And so he said first I was driven. Other students could afford to stroll through their studies. Their parents or patrons would cover the expense. I, on the other hand, needed to climb the ranks in the fishery quickly so I could earn money working on my own projects. Tuition wasn't even my first priority anymore. Debbie was. Second, I was brilliant. Not just your run-of-the-mill brilliance either. I was extraordinarily brilliant. Lastly, I was lucky, plain and simple.
So that last part, I don't understand why he said he was lucky. I think
what the lucky is, how you talked about how Auri is kind of, you said there was a sound, somebody, basically like a rustle in the leaves or something like that, which, by the way, that's the name of the guy that hides in the leaves. Do you know that? His name's Russell.
Russell? Oh.
Yeah.
Well, that makes more sense now.
No, but he's practicing the song 10 tap. He's practicing. He's playing the song 10 Tap Tim, right? So he's playing that song, and then he sort of hears something. He goes to check it out, but he was also studying the runes, and he's been trying to memorize the runes at the same time. And the song's sort of playing in the background of his head as he's investigating what was going on. And then I think the luck is he sort of stumbled while he was looking for Auri. What it really came down to was, it kind of clicked in his head that he could make a song to the same rhythm that is the runes. That's what he memorized to pass the test with Kamar.
So I think that's what I think is part of the luck, yeah. And did you guys have a visceral hatred of the name of that song?
No.
What was it?
Like Tam Tap Tim. I just hate it for some reason.
Oh, what a dick.
Oh yeah.
You don't like the number 10?
Rub me the wrong
Is that your
way.
problem?
Yeah.
You don't like the number 10?
Yeah, it's just something about it. It's just like the ending of it just hits my ear wrong. Just brings up hatred.
So
Resin Rock? You don't like Resin Rock?
Yeah.
So, hey, Dan, I don't know if you want to move forward, but I wanted to ask about that part. Like, why did the greats have? Why do the greats have runes on them? Are we going to talk about that here in a minute? I did not understand that.
I'm guessing that they put runes on there to prevent people from getting in there, to keep it locked. Same as Ambrose put runes on his window doors to bar people from, if they broke into his room, from being able to get out. I'm sure that's why the runes are there, is to prevent people from getting in. I don't know who put them there. Could have been, the masters putting them there to prevent students from going down under there, or it could have been Auri put them on there to prevent people from getting down under there.
Okay.
I was thinking Auri, but I was making a direct connection to the fact that she travels in and out.
I would think it would be the masters would do it, because they don't want, surely they know that there's, stuff underneath the university. I'm sure that they're aware of it, and you would think that they would want to prevent students from getting down there. So, that they would come up with that kind of stuff.
To play on what Tim said, though, a more likely answer is that it's Russell himself.
Yeah. Well, Russell is a former master that went cracked, so kind of Russell together.
I might digress, Tim, but I all of a sudden like that better than Gustav, for the name of the wind, Russell.
Yeah, it's pretty good, right? Yeah,
it's good. It's good. Well played, Tim.
Yeah, right on.
Yeah, so we get he gets his introduction to his spot where he goes and plays his music, and we get the first introduction of Auri without, spelling it out that it's Auri. We get that someone was listening to him. Obviously, we'll meet her here. We'll meet her here very soon, and then with the last part, it ends with him passing his test when he memorized the runes, and then he becomes Manette's apprentice. Manette starts kind of walking him through, how to become, an artificer. And I like that when they talk about, he talks about truly high-level artificing, such as sympathy clocks or gear warrens were still beyond my reach, but I knew that it was just a matter of time. Unfortunately, time was proving to be in short supply. But I like the fact that high-level artificing is something like sympathy clocks, which shortly and later on in this book and in book 2, making sympathy clocks becomes very mundane to him.
Yeah.
And it's high-level stuff that becomes very rote, very boring, very mundane, to the point where when he has to make one, he makes his special sympathy clock or sympathy lamp sympathy lamp, and he makes it in a way where it's different than what other students would typically make, because it bores him. Which I love how you get that progression on all these different things, where it goes from being this high level, super hard to do stuff, and then it becomes very boring to him, where he can just do it with ease, and now it doesn't even interest him.
It definitely speaks to his character as well. I mean, that's kind of it seems like that's how he is once he's sort of mastered something that ends up being rote behavior like that. It would make sense to the character to me that he would kind of be bored with it and slug through it just to get that task done and to make money. And plus, that's the only real reason why he's doing these things. Once he figures it out, it's just a source of income, right? I mean, that's what I got out of it. But I did want to mention real quick. I think it's pretty great the way he intros Auri, because he doesn't really intro Auri. I don't remember if I picked it. I think I picked it up. Someone left an apple. It doesn't just fall there, right? He even points out the tree's this far away. Someone left this apple. It's insinuated that somebody left it there. He heard something. There, you could tell there's something going on. On a reread, it's Auri, but again, because of how skittish she is, she's as skittish as I've ever read a character. It's a perfect way to introduce her without even showing her, and then slowly, he progresses to her. So yeah, I like the subtlety of that.
and he picks
it's. Go ahead.
He picks that subtlety right back up in a couple chapters because all of a sudden he just names her. Not what I mean is all of a sudden while he's telling the story, he says, "Oh, so Auri comes out, and I'm talking to Auri, and she brought me this key, and I remember the first time, and again, this is my first reread, guys. So again, when I read, I'm like, wait a minute, did I miss? No. Okay, now I remember. He just goes ahead and introduces her, knowing that you know very little about what happened while he's in Mainz, finding the apple and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, next time he's there, he brings her back in.
Yeah, he knows her,
and he's like, he calls her out, like, Auri, are you there, or whatever.
Yeah, I was going to say, the next time we read about it, we've missed all their interactions. We've missed a ton of interactions that they've had.
Right.
Which, he could have done that. He could have, it would have been a much longer book. And that would be hard with the pacing. My guess would be that he probably either wrote those and then didn't use them because he couldn't get the pace to match up, or basically he just does this all in his head and then realizes that wouldn't match up. But
he does it a lot in the books. He just skips a lot of the beginning parts to things. Like, he skips the entire trip to the mayor's place. He just, even though, like he says, there's a lot of heroic things that he did, and he's attacked by pirates and almost dies, and then goes to June Pui and has to struggle to survive, and so it's a long trip, and he skips completely over it.
That's a little bit different. I'm kind of more talking about his process, because if that would be an opportunity to tell a whole different story and to bring in other characters if he wanted to do that, and maybe he just said, I don't want to do that here. But with the Auri situation, it's, do I gradually build her in, or do I just jump ahead to where now they have this relationship? Because, probably chapter after chapter after chapter where he's slowly trying to get her to come, it's probably not that interesting,
No.
Or maybe it is. Maybe you could make it possibly, but yeah, I saw that girl again, then she took off and keeps playing the song.
On that note,
I'm glad he did it the way he did.
That relationship really jumps light years ahead. If you remember, when he does finally introduce her, what he's doing is he's getting ready to go to the Aeolian and play for the first time. So when he goes to practice he practices for Auri the last time he practices before he goes and does the ballad or the lay of Sir Sabian. I have to assume that he practiced that song for Auri.
More than likely, yeah. That's where he plays. So if he's playing there, she's hearing it more than likely. Yeah. So yeah.
So that and it's the most important thing to him, from what I gather, and so it's that relationships is well established and important, more important than we've seen. Yeah,
super interesting, man. Like how I was going to say how it evolves over time. It doesn't really evolve so much, but it's such an interesting. Like, she's kind of always, she's not always accessible, but he knows where she is. It's just an interesting. It's an interesting relationship to have. It almost seems like a little sister to him, but then then how she feels towards him. It's like they depend on one another emotionally. You know what I mean? She kind of depends on him for food to a degree, and that was one of the things. Well, I guess we'll get there.
From her book, we're obviously we're gonna dive into her when she gets actually introduced, but just from her book, she thinks of Kvothe as almost in the same way that he thinks of her. Like, she sees herself in the role of the person who is supposed to be taking care of him and protecting him and looking over him. And so she sees herself in that same role that he is, where, like, with her gifts and how thought out they are and how specific they are, she sees herself as almost as his protector, and he obviously sees her in the same way, that he's looking out for her. He's giving her the bread and, the specific type of beer that's got a ton of minerals in it, and so he's looking out for her health, but she's also looking out for his well-being as well. So they both see each other as damaged and that they're helping fix the person.
While we're on this subject, just so I don't skip over it later, another one of those instances where I'm wondering what Rothfuss is trying to tell us is when Kvothe first introduces her. Towards the end of his introduction, he says, "I always considered her my little moon fae."
Yeah, we'll go into that stuff. Yeah. That's coming up in one of the chapters. We'll definitely dive into that.
Okay.
But then I think that's pretty much it for 51. I don't know if you guys have any other things on that, because obviously we're going to dive into Auri again.
No, I really didn't.
Okay, well, chapter 52 is entitled The Burning. Kvothe practices his lute as much as he can with his grueling class schedule. He eats some lunch during the 5th span under the pennant pole with Sim and Willem. They complain that they haven't seen him enough, that he's too busy. They think he's overwhelmed. Kvothe goes to sympathy class where he battles a boy named Fenton and almost kills him, or the boy almost kills himself, really. He wins 22 jots after betting on himself with good odds, and Kvothe picks the story back up after that. He pays Willem a little visit in his room and informs the reader that Kilvin has banned him from working in the artificery, as Will and Sim urged him to do so. Kvothe forgives the two of his friends and inquires about the Aeolian. So we're getting ready to move into his music, but let's talk about that one.
Yeah, I like this chapter for a few. I love the class with Dal. I had forgotten that this was coming up when we were doing the last episode, and I was thinking what we were going into. I had forgotten that this was in chapter 52, so I was glad to see that we get to talk about it this episode. But I also like you get his schedule. So you kind of get how full it is. Like he's got 2 hours each day in the Medica. He's got another 2 hours of lecture and ciphering each day in mathematics, 3 hours of studying under Manette in the fishery, learning the tricks of the trade, and then another 3 hours in Dal's class. So what is that, like 10 hours right there, plus another couple hours every day in the fishery working on his own stuff, plus playing his music. So he's putting in probably 12, 14-hour days.
It's so perfectly done, man. I mean, well, perfect is maybe too strong a word, but to basically point out his schedule and how it's driving him exhausted, and he's going to reach the point where he burns out and breaks, which they talk about. But to combine that with all the tension of the duel with Fenton is tremendous, because you're already building in that it's a slow growing tension of what he's doing to himself by just doing too much, and then to combine that with the super, super tense face-off that they go through, it's just great. The timing to line those two things together works really, really well.
Yeah, I mean, you get that he's run down and running ragged, having to sprint to the class before it starts. And so you get, before he goes in that battle, you get a feel for this dude's running on fumes. And that's where he's at when the battle starts, is he's on fumes.
Well, and it's great too. I mean, one of the things that I kind of realized in this chapter, which, I've grown to respect over time, but Rothfuss is a master at building the stakes and reminding you of what's at stake. And he does that pretty, in a tremendous way within this chapter, because he builds up the schedule. He's here for all these reasons. He wants to study all these things, and he's putting everything he has into it. The way he describes music right at the beginning is so great, where music is a proud, temperamental mistress. Give her the time and attention she deserves, and she is yours. Slight her, and there will come a day when you call, and she will not answer. So I began sleeping less to give her the time she needed. So his respect for the fact that he now has music again, and he can't slight that. So what is he going to cut? You know what I mean? It's a decision he's never been. Well, he hasn't been faced with. I don't think really in his life, right?
Well, and
so now
the rest. Well, the rest of what it's up against is everything that he has to do to survive. He makes the point that other people may have the money to fiddle fart around and not give a shit about their studies, but he has to put that time in because he may not have the money for another semester, so he has to learn everything he can, and that's why he's putting in all the hard work that he is because not to mention what he's doing with the Sigildry, betting on himself and trying to make money that way.
Yeah, and I mean he's desperately poor and he's in a hole to a very, very dangerous person.
Yeah.
He doesn't really understand how dangerous she is yet, but he's at least got some sense of it's a major problem that she's got his blood. But he's got to try to get out of this hole and maximize his time, and he just doesn't see a lot of light at the end of the tunnel at this stage yet.
And that again, it's so great because he spends a good portion of the beginning of this chapter building up that schedule, starting to drive him ragged, but then also the reminders of how poor he is. Like he's impoverished. He doesn't have the money, so he can't. He's being pulled from all sides here. He needs to make money in the fishery. He now has that option, but he's got Devi. He's got his tuition coming up. He's got these things that are all pulling at him from all corners. So again, that's what I was talking about, where Rothfuss keeps building the stakes and making it very clear that he doesn't have many choices in terms of ways to be able to deal with these issues. But now they come to a head.
It's a good point, Tim, because I reading through it, I noticed these points where all of a sudden we're in this extremely intense situation like this battle. But the truth is, it's not an all of a sudden kind of thing. Rothfuss has built up this feeling of desperate need, and it just rolls right into the fight where, not only is he desperately in need of winning this, or he'll have no money at all because he's just bet everything he's got on it, but also the desperate need to survive because he's getting ready to lose and losing his body heat and so on. It's a good point.
It's interesting too because he's in a completely different position now that he has friends. If he didn't have friends looking out for him, telling him, "Look, dude, look at him. Look what's happening to him," and they start talking about people always do this. They come in, they take on too much, they eventually run themselves ragged, and then they shut down. And they're warning him. And then they even, step up and talk to Kilvin to eventually, who knows? That could have saved his life. I don't know. I don't know how bad it was going to get. But that's one of the things that we do find out with the duel here and how dangerous it really can be. Even just the dueling can be extraordinarily dangerous if you're, if you're not respecting how big of a risk you're taking in these actions.
Well, how quickly is the just real quick, Dan, how quickly does the fire happen?
Fire?
The reason, the fire in the fishery.
It's a while. It's towards the end of book one. We're about like halfway through.
The reason I just asked because, with his tiredness, if he was in that state at that point.
No.
Go ahead.
No.
So before we get into the dueling and stuff, there was one thing I wanted to mention that I mentioned before, how he peppers in these little reminders, right? So not to skip over all this stuff, but we're about to get to Denna, and he starts to talk about how if he can't meet his tuition, if he can't pay Devi, what is it he can possibly do? And he says, in the back of his mind, I didn't know what I'd do, pull up stakes and head for Annalyn to look for Denna, perhaps. And that's just left there. He then goes into his conversation with Will and Sim, and he apologizes to him and says, I'm sorry for ignoring you guys, blah, 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 blah. But he hits us with that, just again, it's in the back of Kvothe's mind, because he hasn't really mentioned Denna for quite a while. I mean, since he's been at the university, I don't think it's come up, unless maybe he didn't really talk about Denna, but when we hear about Fela, when we hear about other women, it occurs to me that I think about Denna. I think about it because it's Kvothe's viewpoint of who Fela is. So then, because we know where he's at, we know who he's comparing these women in his mind to. But
yeah, he definitely gave a little, just a little reminder that Kvothe is still thinking about her, that she's still on his mind. But I also like that through the kindness that Will and Sim are showing through their concern for him, and he gets a lump in his throat and can hardly talk, shows you just kind of how psychologically scarred he is still from his time in Tarbean. Just like simple, his normal things that friends, do for each other. They give a shit about you, and just someone giving the shit about him fucking almost breaks him into tears, and it really demonstrates how scarred he is.
Yeah, it reminded me of Tim when I was reading through when he says that it was a long time since anybody, missed me. And so I imagine Tim goes through, I imagine when I was reading that Tim goes through that a lot, that nobody misses him ever.
Yeah, no.
Well, when you're married with two daughters, nobody gives a shit about you. So yeah, that's kind of how it feels. That's what it feels like. You're on an island by yourself.
Them included.
But Kvothe has had people like that gave a shit about him before, and so he had that he had it, then he lost it, and then now he's got it again. So that's going to bring up a well of emotion. When you just never have it,
like Tim,
that's just normal.
It's different. Yeah,
so it's different. Yeah,
guys, I'm going to get upset. I don't want to start crying on the podcast.
See,
you're used to it.
Tim starts crying when you make fun of him, because normally people don't even care enough to do that, and so it gets him.
It's not a sadness; it's a happiness that we're even talking to them.
They care about me. People are shitting on you. You start. It's like they care. They like.
It's me. Like that. It's like that nerdy kid that you're trying to make feel better, and you're like, look, if they didn't like you, they wouldn't make fun of you, and then you think to yourself, God, that can't be further from the truth.
Yeah,
Jesus.
But then, so then we get into the class. I like too how it shows Dal teaching, when it's Dal stood between two medium-sized braziers, and his well-trimmed beard and dark master's robes still remind me of the stereotypical evil magician that appears in so many bad Turin plays. What each of you must remember is that the sympathist is tied to flame. He said, "We are its master and its servant." And then he walks slowly from one brazier to the next, and as he walks away from one, it dims, and the one he walks towards lights up. And obviously, and then Kvothe appreciates that the flair for the dramatic that he has, his showmanship. But they do a good job of demonstrating that Dal is a pretty fucking solid teacher. Like, this seems like his classes seem like they'd be fun to begin with because you're learning how to duel, but also it seems like he's probably a pretty fucking good teacher as well.
And then Kvothe even points out just the raw practicality of, if you're going to be an arcanist, you need to be able to defend yourself in the world because there are other people out there like this. So he kind of, you're learning the basics of how to wield this power, but then at the same time, they're learning how to fight.
Yeah, that's... And they're trying to teach them how to fight, but not spelling it out that that's what they're trying to do, because obviously they have the rules against using magic for... what do they call it when he used it against him? They said he... malfeasance. Mm-hmm. Using magic to harm someone's called malfeasance, and, arcanists used to be burned at the stake for doing that kind of thing. So it's definitely frowned upon, but they're not so naive as to, realize that some people aren't learning this shit and then going out in the world and using it for nefarious purposes. So they're preparing people to be able to go out in the world and defend themselves and to fight people that are using it for nefarious purposes.
Yeah, and much like we talked about with Auri, this is a similar situation where we get here and Kvothe's undefeated. He can barely get good odds when betting against him, or when going through the betting process, because he's smoking everybody. And again, man, it's really, this is he's building again so effectively tension throughout this, because Kvothe's got an idea, this great idea, right? I'm going to turn the odds against me. How am I going to do that? Well, we'll figure it out. And then Savoy's like, all right, well, okay. And then, we get it fed to us with our understanding. So again, we've talked about this before, man, to be able to explain how it works and to do it in an interesting way. You put this fucking life on the line, man. Like, to be able to learn dueling or this type of sympathy in this way, and to learn it to where two people pitted against each other, yet Kvothe has made it so risky for himself, and he's physically and pretty much mentally exhausted leading up to this point as well. And it's great. It's just that confluence of all these factors just builds and builds and builds the tension. And then, we're so invested in the battle by that point. It's freaking great, man.
So I've got a question about the battle itself, if you guys will allow it. So,
nope.
No? Okay, never mind. What I understand is basically they're having to use their own body heat as the source of energy. And Fenton has a piece of a wick that he's using as his sympathetic link between himself, because he's holding the wick in his hand, and the wick of a candle that's in front of Kvothe. And Kvothe is using a piece of straw as a sympathetic link that he's holding in his hand as he's using that straw to light the candle in front of Fenton. But Fenton gets himself into trouble, because not only is he not just using the warmth from his hand, but somehow or other he has pricked himself, and he's actually using his blood and the wick as a sympathetic link.
Yeah, he's using his blood.
But so the big setup, the big thing, just to make sure Fitz didn't miss it, the fact that they don't have a source. Kvothe expected he would pick a source, and Fenton says no source for the heat, which means they have to use body heat.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, so like the link is between the wick and the candle. And so Kvothe's link is between straw and the candle. So his link is like 10 times worse than Fenton's. And then the source is just their body heat. So they have to use their body heat to create fire to light the other person's candle. And because he's using straw as his link and the other guy's using wick, he's at a severe disadvantage. They have the same source, so they don't have an advantage on the source. They both have to use their body heat. But as far as the links between what they got for the to light these, to use your source, to use your body heat to light the candle, their link is lighting the wick or the straw and using that to light the candle. So Kvothe's at a severe disadvantage, and he's bet all his money that he has on this, and he wasn't expecting to be at such a disadvantage. He thought it would be lessened when you bring in the brazier. It would have made it an easier job for him, and he would have felt comfortable being able to overcome the disadvantage. But the position he's put himself in, that disadvantage that he's in right now, that he did not feel that he was going to be able to overcome.
Yeah, he says, I couldn't win. I mean, he said, not only was I going to lose my perfect rank, he was like, I had no way to signal Savoy. So again, I mean, he just keeps building the tension and building and building. So then you get that too, where he's trying to like look at Savoy and kind of signal to him to like cancel the bets. Can't do that either. So he's like, shit, man. So it just keeps built. So the stakes they keep building, man. So now the money's on the line. We don't really get as much that his life is on the line. We just think, all right, now he's going to lose all this money. And again, he just reminded us, Debbie, tuition, like everything that's on the line here, man. And it just keeps building. There's so much tension in this chapter, man. It's just freaking great.
So the one thing that they didn't even mention at this point is that Fenton is using his blood. So I didn't pick up on that my initial read through. So my reread through I did. So I started thinking about it, and I was like, okay, so if let's say that the straw compared to the wick is 1/10 of a sympathetic link, and then the simple fact of Kvothe holding that straw in his hand compared to Fenton holding a bloody wick, where he can have like a direct draw of heat from his own blood, make that another, 1/5. His Kvothe's alar has to be, 50 times stronger than what Fenton's doing. And I thought it was really funny when before he even knew that, when they're sitting there and they first start off, and so Kvothe starts trying to put his hand in front of the candle like, no,
yeah, he
you
does
can't
those
see
little
it
petty,
there.
little petty tricks. I think what this speaks to, the fact that he thought, I can't win. It's over. I'm going to lose the money. I think that speaks to, again, like what happened with him, where he's like, I shouldn't have been able to do this. He's surprising himself yet again. I think this again goes back to what Dan said, that he's like a direct descendant of like the greatest of the great. I think he's, and I'll bring it up later, but well, go ahead. Talk amongst yourselves.
Yeah. I also love, like, right before the battle starts, so when he kind of lays out what they're going to do, he's like, the object was to light your opponent's candle without letting him do the same to yours. This involves splitting your mind into two different pieces. One piece tried to hold the alar that your piece of wicking, or straw if you were stupid, was the same as the wick of the candle you were trying to light. Then you drew energy from the source to make it happen. What I like of that part is again, his deadpan humor that he puts in these books, where or straw if you were stupid.
It's always compelling for the character that, has all these powers, still will self-deprecate. That's always compelling to me. It's very much unlike Dan, however, that he can self-deprecate himself, and be humble, literally, actually, in actuality be humble, not just, say that he is, but actually be.
Well, that is that is an impressive quality for Kvothe is he's so powerful and he's humble. He's not got my level of humility, but he's got some level of humility, and that is impressive for people like him and me to have humility with our extreme prowess.
Interesting.
Is self-deprecating.
Well, you brought it up, so he's
got the other side.
Make it clear for the audience so they could understand where you are drawing that similarity between me and Kvothe yet again.
Well,
you keep bringing it up, and I agree with you 100%.
But there's a difference between what I'm saying with Kvothe is self-deprecating. You're self-defecating. There's the difference between those two.
I'm Tim defecating. I'm shitting on you guys.
What do I got to do with it? I didn't say it. But yeah, you do run the parallels with Kvothe there. He was that last chapter when he's like, I wasn't luck, okay, or maybe I was a little luck, but I was brilliant. And I don't mean I was just brilliant, but I was really brilliant.
I'm with you guys. I'm very much like Kvothe. I 100% agree with everything you guys are saying.
But what you explain there with Kvothe's explanation is huge, because it is explaining how this actually works, what they're actually doing, the breaking the mind into two parts. I don't think we've gotten that before this. Well, maybe
he had to. When in him's class, he had to break his mind in multiple parts,
yeah.
And then obviously when he's learning it, seek the stone and that kind of stuff. So it's just another layer of that.
Yeah. All right. So, but then he says again, I immediately devoted my whole mind to the defense of my own candle, began to think furiously. There was no way I could win. No way I could win. It doesn't matter how skilled a fencer, blah, blah, blah. He goes on, but then he lowers himself into the heart of stone. So we get that again. And there's a few times in this group of chapters where he does give us a little bit of a clearer picture of Heart of Stone. At least that's kind of what I remember. from these chapters where, I mean, first he lowers himself from the Heart of Stone, just devoting most of his mind to the protection of the candle. And then he does what Fitz said, where he just does a little binding with the candle, then tips it over, tries to get it to roll off of Fenton's table. I like all that stuff, those little distractions. And then he tries to tell him a joke or something.
Yeah, have you heard the one about the tinker, the Taylin, the farmer's daughter, and the butter churn yet?
Yeah. Yeah, so when yeah, that's a good build up, right?
Yeah. I mean, what's the joke? Finish it.
So when he notices that he has no response and his face is locked and Fenton's face is locked in fierce concentration, he gives up. He does mention, I think it was there. Yeah. So I lowered myself more deeply into the Heart of Stone and forgot the world apart from the 2 candles and a piece of wick and straw. So when Fitz was wanting an explanation of a clear explanation of like Heart of Stone, that to me is a very, very clear way to picture that, where nothing else exists in the world. It's just these 2 candles, a piece of wick, a straw, and he's focused on nothing else.
Yeah, and you get like right before that with his, after a minute I was covered in a clammy, chill sweat. I shivered. Fenton saw this and gave me a smile with bloodless lips. I redoubled my efforts, but his candle ignored my best attempts to force it into flame. So you get this like gradual buildup of what it's doing to his body, and that he's not able to overcome it. Fenton is thinking he's going to win, and then it builds up. Like 5 minutes had passed while the whole class was quiet as stones. Most duels lasted no more than a minute or two. One person quickly proving himself more clever or possessed of a stronger will. Both my arms were cold now. So it's like whole body is just slowly becoming colder. The whole, the battle is going way longer than expected. You get the wisp of smoke began to curl from his wick, and then he bore down even harder. And then at some point, Fenton must have cut himself and tried to get him through blood, and from doing that he gave himself binder's chills, and that's what ended up putting him under and why he lost.
That whole progression, man, it's really impressive to me because it's ripe with tension the whole time. It's difficult to picture. How do you write 2 people thinking really hard? You know what I'm saying? Like, how do you do that? But like, I bore down. I realized that my breath was hissing through my clenched teeth. My lips pulled back in a feral grin. It's great. And Fenton didn't seem to notice, his eyes growing glassy and unfocused. So he's shivering, and then it starts to shiver more violently. Fenton, like a muscle in his neck starts to pulse like a, what did he say? Like almost like a...
Woodenly, Fenton turned to look, but instead of rallying to his own defense, he made a slow, leaden gesture of dismissal and laid his head in the crook of his arm.
Yeah, it's man, it builds so well, man, and then it gets really bad for Fenton.
Yeah, well, you can, see, and that's the other progression, is seeing how Fenton kind of goes from there's one point. So Fenton kind of goes from an extreme focus, like like almost like he's in the Heart of Stone, and Kvothe can't shake his focus. But then at some point when Kvothe is really concentrating, he mentions that Fenton's focus kind of shifts to the side, or he looks off into the distance.
He passes out. Yeah, he passes out. Like,
that's
what that part, like it's said,
is it not prior to
notice his eyes growing glassy and unfocused? I shivered again so violently I almost missed seeing the trimmer in his hand. Then slowly Fenton's head began to nod toward the tabletop. His eyelids drooped. I set my teeth. So yeah, he went from, it looked like he was gonna win, and I think he would have won had he not tried to draw from his blood. He tried to. It's basically the way I picture this in my mind is like a boxer's got a guy on the ropes and he fucking empties the gas tank trying to knock the guy out, and he's not able to knock him out, and then he has nothing left to defend himself, and then the guy, recovers, recovers, gets his feet under him, and then proceeds to knock the guy out after he's fucking punched himself out. And I think that's what Fenton did. Had Fenton been more patient and just kept defending and waiting for Kvothe to wear down, I think he would have ended up winning.
Well, would he have had that amount of sympathetic link that he possibly could have? I mean, I guess it depends on when in the battle Fenton, because they don't really say how Fenton cut his finger, do they?
No.
Yeah, I mean, he just made himself bleed. It doesn't, I mean,
Right.
So
what I'm saying,
it's said exactly when it happens. But
all I mean is, would he even be able to come even close to Kvothe's Alar if he hadn't had that strong sympathetic link? Not only did he have the wick, but he had blood coming straight from his, to be able to pull the heat out. Would he have been able to do...
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't think he did that right away. I think that's what he ended up... At some point, I think he thought he could go for the kill, and he went for it, and he missed. Maybe. But I think Eddie just focused on his defense, because Kvothe could not get through his defense. He couldn't do anything. He wasn't having any luck at all, and it wasn't until Fenton passed out that he was able to light his candle on fire. And so Kvothe, through that battle, he started off feeling chills, and then the chills kept progressing. He was getting worse, and he went and had major problems. Like at the end of this, he goes and hides in the hallway for a few minutes and is shaking violently. So he was obviously in bad shape. I think had Fenton just been patient and just been more focused on his defense, he would have eventually wore Kvothe out first. But he went for that win, and it cost him.
Yeah, it's interesting how they reveal that, because they kind of reveal that a little bit later. My reputation was intact. He walked out when all the hubbub was going on, when they basically realized, dude's going to die. And that's how dangerous. I mean, there's so much gets accomplished in this chapter, because we also realize the risks of doing these types of things, because he would have died. Fenton would have died if they weren't there. If somebody wasn't there to help him, he's out on his own. He's dead.
This chapter is great for setting up his battle with the bandits in the woods.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Or Devi.
Well,
that
specifically the binder's chills.
Yeah.
Because he almost dies of hypothermia. He assumes when he's fighting the bandits in the woods, he assumes that what he's doing is going to kill him. That he's not going to survive, because he's at one point he's like, I got to end this now, because if I don't get under a fire, I'm going to die anyways.
Right.
And so this sets up how dangerous binder's chills are, and it also sets up that shows that Ambrose is likely the one who broke his lute string, and you get that in the in a couple chapters. So, but binder's chills this was good for a couple other parts in the book, setting this up.
Yeah, and I thought that just having reread it, I remembered going through it the first time and just being really captivated by the story itself. And then this reread, I kind of like what's the big deal? I should say, going into it, it's, and I may be being redundant here, but the trivial nature of being in class and just doing this battle, and Kvothe's got this reputation and this and that, and he needs money, but it really then the story kicks in and really just sucks you in, and you're feeling those cold chills as you're moving through the story of Fenton and himself, and Kvothe himself, starting to wear down, and the intensity of the scene. It's just amazing how you could take how Rothfuss takes something that seems like it's a trivial scenario and really makes it just a really in-depth and enthralling part of the book.
Yeah, he takes a lecture in a classroom. He takes a lecture in a classroom scene, and a scene where he's trying to introduce binder's chills. There's a lot of world building and info dump in this chapter, But again, it's unbelievably entertaining. It's extremely
Really
engrossing.
It's
He's
so
very rare how good he is at this. It's very
so
rare someone's that good.
It's so intense, man. There's so much tension because of everything that's being built up with Kvothe and what he has on the line and how like he's in a vulnerable state. And then to do something like this, again, I think it does definitely speak volumes again to, and he thought he was done. Although, again, I guess Fenton did make a big mistake here as well because, like the guy even says, whoever hits him on the back or, congratulates Kvothe, he's like, oh, how about that? He wore himself out. Like, well, yeah, he went too far. He took it too far because, like Dan said, it didn't look like Kvothe had... If Fenton just kept his defenses up, he probably would have eventually wore Kvothe through. But, I mean, who knows? Didn't work out that way, so...
Yeah, it's tough to know for certain, but it didn't sound like Kvothe was going to win, and then, it turned around when Fenton passed out, and I don't think he would have if he had just stuck to using his body heat. Maybe it would have been a stalemate. Who knows? Maybe both of them would have failed.
There's kind of a little subtle thing about Savoy when he asked, Elk Dal basically asks a quiz question, and Savoy comes up with the right answer. Yeah. I was kind of surprised by that because he kind of comes across as just kind of
like, this fucking dude. Like grudgingly like praises his answer or whatever, gives him a compliment, where it's like clearly the masters do not like this dude.
I do definitely like I like Dal a lot, especially as we move through the chapter and he's like, so what did the odds come out to? Or basically like how'd the numbers work out? Would you win? Yeah. So he's not supposed to sanction this shit, obviously, but he's all, he's cool.
He's also not stupid. Like, why the fuck would you pick straw?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's got to be like, that's why he's like, what did the odds work out to? He's like, yeah, that's the only reason you would pick something that fucking stupid is you were trying to fucking gamble.
Yeah. And he kind of gives him a little nod as well, a little further nod where, Kvothe's trying to rush out of there and he like has him stand by the fire and Kvothe's like, thanks for the fire. And he's like, Dal says, we're both sympathists. Give me a friendly wave. You're welcome to it at any time. Kind of, to me, I mean, coming from like your professor, that's a pretty big compliment of, respect.
Yeah. Almost like he's letting Kvothe know that he recognizes the level that Kvothe is on. Hey, you're a step ahead of everybody else, and anyway, yeah, I thought the same thing, Tim.
I don't think Hem's going to do that. I don't think there's going to be a point where Hem makes a gesture like that to Kvothe. I just don't see it happening.
It's pronounced ham.
I see ham. I see ham sandwich. I see his relationship with Kvothe really like turning on a dime in book 3, and he becomes like Kvothe's father figure.
Yeah,
probably. It's a likely scenario.
What a huge twist and turn by Rothfuss, and it's a Luke Skywalker type thing. It says, you know what, Kvothe? I am your father. I'm Arladin. I'm in hiding.
Yeah. I
just turned into an ass of scumbag who doesn't look anything like who he once was. Yeah. He's a shapeshifter.
Ambrose is actually his brother.
He was actually, I was tapping Natalia Lackless, and your dad fucking took my leftovers.
Jeez.
And after I pumped you in her belly. You're my illegitimate bastard.
This verbiage is just terrible.
I thought it was fantastic. I was fucking writing poetry there. I don't know what you're talking about. I was basically doing a Rothfuss on the podcast.
Yeah, right.
You and Kvothe got away with words, my friend.
Yeah. Fucking dumping loads and everything, man. I don't know what fucking more you're looking for out of me. Fucking poetry. That's fucking beautiful, man. It's beautiful. Brings a tear to my eye just thinking about it. Then we get, the finish of the chapter is him going into Willem's room, finding out that, he got banned from the fishery, and Will and Sim kind of interfered and got in his way to stop him, to force him to take a break that he didn't want. And the only really part I had on it was when Sim came in.
Yeah.
Aren't you supposed to be in the fishery? He asked lamely. I laughed, and Simmons' relief was almost tangible. I like that, just that it's one of those first points where you learn how bad of a liar Sim is, and he never gets better at it. He never gets good at it. He can't stop putting his foot in his mouth, and he's a terrible liar throughout both books.
Like, Kvothe, what are you doing here?
Yeah, Rothfuss does a really good job of just like building out what an innocent character is like. You know, he's like so naive. It's in all these different qualities, which are they're very consistent with Sim, which is, you know, it's something that you could easily make fun of, but in the same time, in the same respect, is always respectable because he's a genuinely good person. You know. But the only other thing that I had in that little section, I mean, one, it's kind of weird for Rothfuss's style. It's not a similar thing that he would typically do, something like this where he just kind of jumps to that. But that's kind of strange. But the more substantive thing that I picked up was, rather than storm in and start, you know, being angry with them, which he was, he went and played his music for a while and like chilled out, which is kind of interesting. So it's like his music does have this meditative or like calming quality where he thinks things through, which is pretty cool. And that, you know, that's where he got his little rhyme with the runes too.
It reminds me of the, you know, how many people say don't go to bed angry. Yeah. And I've always, every time I hear that, I'm always like, that's just terrible advice. It's just stupid. No, go to bed and then you'll wake up, and most of the shit is so minor that once you've had a night's sleep, it's like, why was I even mad in the first place? Like, fucking move on. Get over it, fucking baby. Why were you being a baby? Like, can you imagine, like, if you have to, first off, that's not how people work. You don't work it out. Like, you're just going to sit there and argue endlessly forever. You're not going to be like, you argue for 3 hours and then like, you know what? You're right. I was wrong. Thank you for bringing me to your side. I really appreciate how you won me over with a well thought out argument. It's like, no, it just keeps getting worse. Stop. Go to bed. Go to bed and wake up not angry and then discuss it.
No, we're not going to bed. We're hashing this out. I'm still mad, damn it. We're talking about this tonight.
You do your best thinking when you're sleep deprived. That's clear. That's unequivocally true.
There's multiple sides to that, because some people, what they just need is to be heard. Once that's out, then they can chill the fuck out. So it kind of depends on the individual. But what I also felt about that,
but you can still be heard in the morning after a good night's sleep.
I get it. But what I also I don't know if it's like Da Vinci or somebody, but it's an old theory where it's just like, give it 20 minutes, or, you know, don't make major decisions when you're fucking hot and pissed.
Yeah.
You know, chill out for a minute, whatever it takes.
It sounds like an outdated theory.
It's the one like relationship advice where I hear it and I'm always like, well, this is why like 50% of marriages end in divorce. People are listening to this stupid shit.
Yeah.
And they're fucking like, nope, can't go to bed. Let's fucking hash this shit out. You keep fucking parking behind me. You know I gotta leave for early in the morning. Like, no, let that shit go, buddy. Go to bed.
Yeah, I think you're right, Dan, in that why most of these marriages are ending up in divorces, because people
it would be interesting. It would be interesting
advice
to talk to a bunch of divorcees and see what was the moment. And then just hear them talk about all these nights that they stayed up till 2 a.m. screaming at each other.
Yeah, I bet you if you interview like people and you ask 100 people why their marriage failed, I'm gonna go out on a limb and none of them are gonna say, you know what? We just kept going to bed angry. We just kept going and getting a good night's rest, getting our 8 hours in every night, and that just destroyed the marriage. If we had been putting in the work, only getting like 2 hours sleep every night, everything would have been smooth sailing. because everybody knows sleep is unimportant.
I'm just going to
winning
throw
the
this
argument is the important matter.
I want to throw this quick aside. I think that probably 9 out of 10 of them is because one person cheated on the other. It has nothing to do with who went to bed mad. It's that she or he fucked somebody else. Just saying. It's probably the number one cause.
I don't think that happens.
That wouldn't work for me.
They're married. You made a
for me.
vow like to be with the same person, so I don't see what you mean. Like, why would you cheat if you're married?
Yeah, good point.
Doesn't make any sense.
It does.
It's just like you can't lie on the stand. You made a vow.
You promised to tell the truth. You promised to not cheat. It's like the what was it? The Office, when Michael Scott sees his old girl's pregnant, and he's like, "You cheated on me after I specifically told you not to."
Yes.
Pinky promise?
Classic.
That should be what they do on the stand. Do you promise to tell the truth? Pinky promise now. Yes. Okay. All right, we're good.
So the only other thing, or the one thing that I wanted to bring up in this chapter about Kvothe not going to bed mad, and going to practice his music and calm down a little bit. After he's won these 22 jots, and he's not allowed in the fishery, he's got no other option. So the only other thing he can do is go play for his pipes. So he asked the guys about the Aeolian because he knows that that's the only way he's going to be able to make it through this semester.
Yep. Now meet Auri, and then we get into the Aeolian.
Okay, well, that brings us to chapter 53, entitled Slow Circles. In this chapter, Kvothe tells us about the Aeolian, and it is a renowned musical establishment where musicians have to pay to play. And if they're good enough, they can earn a set of pipes or a patron. Sometime later, Kvothe and Sim are chatting at the pennant pole, and Kvothe tells Sim he is going to try for his pipes. We are then introduced to Auri as Kvothe is practicing in the mains, and they exchange gifts. They eat some bread. Kvothe gives her some water. She gives him a key. Kvothe then plays some music for her.
You get the introduction to the Aeolian, and I like the way that it's introduced. It gives you a good example of how different this kind of bar is, and why they go there, what the purpose would be, why you would pay to play, and all that kind of stuff. It gives you a really good idea of what the Aeolian is all about, and so you get like that. It's hosted the best musicians in the city, and if you knew good music from bad, you knew the Aeolian was the best. To get in the front door, you had to pay a jot, so you had to pay to get in. Then you had to pay a 1 silver talent just to be able to play. And so these badass musicians got to pay to play. But the reason they are willing to do that is they can get the talent pipes that they could use to get into bars and be able to play in bars to make some money. And from then on, you could use that talent pipe to get in there and for free, and then you could play whenever you want. You'd also play in there. You can get money and gifts from people who are pleased with your performance, and then the big thing he's looking for is the ability to get a patron.
So I got a couple questions real quick. It seemed like they both paid to get in the jot, then he pays to play, and so when he pays to play, they ask him, "Are you going to try for your pipe?" Should we assume that anytime anyone pays to play their instrument, they're trying to get their pipes? That's what they mean when they say, "Are you going to try for your pipes?"
Yes,
because you don't. Play, if you have the pipes, you don't have to pay again,
right?
To play, actually, but you can be called on to play at any time. That's kind of one of the catches.
Yeah, you have to play if they tell you to after you have your pipes.
If they ask. Yeah, if somebody requests, There were two... go ahead.
Go ahead, Tim. No, you go ahead.
I was just going to mention there were two subtle things that really stood out to me in the beginning of this. Number one, he mentions the Aeolian is where blah, blah, blah. The first paragraph, he does something that Dan and I talked about last episode that he doesn't do very often, where he basically does his interlude voice, but not an interlude chapter. So he's sort of speaking to the audience directly. And what he's talking about is he's slowly circling around to get to you-know-who, wink, wink, sort of. It's almost, that's kind of how he's saying it. So he's like, we're building up to Denna. I can't just go right into it. I'm doing it subtly. And then he doesn't even talk about her in the rest of the chapter, which is pretty interesting. So that kind of stood out to me. What also stood out is when he brings up, but it might earn you a wealthy patron instead. And then it's one sentence, a patron. A 2-word sentence that is its own paragraph, a patron. So he's very much emphasizing, he's elevating that idea to a big degree by pointing it out in that way to me as a reader when I read it that way.
Yeah, and obviously for a poor kid and someone who grew up with a really good patron and Greyfallow.
Yeah, it's a dream.
Obviously it's extremely important.
Yeah, well, it's a dream of getting his comfort back. I mean, that's why he had a comfortable youth. Was Greyfallow's, their colors got them in everywhere. They were able to travel. I mean, they still were, they still had everything that gets carried with the Edema Rue and the misunderstandings, but it was because they were Greyfallow's people that he had that comfort.
So I was a little bit confused by it because, and I mean what I mean. Confused by this chapter and the one at the Aeolian is because Kvothe explains it like you can get a patron, but you really could do well and get your talent pipes. But then Kvothe goes in there, steals the show, gets his pipes, never gets a patron. And I know it's because of Ambrose.
Because of Ambrose.
But even on the first night, though, you know what I mean? Even on the first night, I would have expected it.
Well, remember, he talks about, when he has a conversation with Threp, he was like, I got to rub elbows with these people if I want to get a patron. And so he knows there's more groundwork to be laid. But it's not just as simple as you go play one time, then you get a patron, then you're set. That wasn't really his mindset. It was like get the talent pipes, get into a place, start rubbing elbows with the rich people, and then eventually get a patron out of it.
So I guess if
things worked out differently, had Threp not recently signed someone on, then he would have got a patron out of it.
Right, and that makes sense that they would have to kind of establish a relationship. Maybe I could understand the relationship a little bit better. I mean, is it that you could be a patron of someone and so they're paying for your food, your clothes, a place to stay, and so you need to be able to be at their beck and call, whether that means at a dinner party or at their establishment? I mean, are these the kind of things that a patron provides one and expects to?
Yeah. It's a give and take relationship.
Well, and they're also getting you gigs, so it's kind of a well-rounded sort of thing. Patrons are patrons to be able to utilize the musician, but then I get the vibe that typically patrons also, they want to find the next great artist. It's a huge, that's like it's the same thing in our world, man. That's the point of a lot of people that do it. They love music or they love art. So they have artists or they have musicians that are underneath them. They also typically, patrons get to own a lot of the art. Different with music, but they get, that bragging right. Plus, if they're the patron that brought up, this guy, then they're likely to get the next one, or they're more likely to be able to help the next one. It's a
they do a real good job. Yeah, they do. Yeah. They do a real good job of explaining patrons in a later chapter when Sem and Manette are explaining it to Will, or maybe it was Will and Manette were explaining it to Sem. I can't remember who was later on, sure, but Manette kind of goes through a thing and explains some of them are doing it for the music, like Threat, but others are doing it because they're sending these guys in to go and play music. They're wearing their colors. The people, when they go into these towns that these guys run, they get these guys going in wearing those colors, playing music, and they see that, this guy provides entertainment. And then when the tax man comes in wearing the same colors, they're less likely to, string that dude up and kill him. So it's also a mechanism to establish themselves as kind of their ruler and giving them a justification for the taxes that they're going to collect from them.
Huh.
So they go into a lot of detail on exactly the different aspects, advantages to being a patron beyond just the music.
Okay.
And then, he talks about that it would take him years before he would get all of his music back, but he's ready, and he goes into his little spot where he plays, and we're introduced to Auri. And I like that, right off, she's like, "You're late," came the vaguely petulant reply. "Sorry," I said. "Do you want to come up tonight?" A slight pause. "No, come down." "There's not much moon tonight," I said in my best encouraging tones. "Are you sure you don't want to come up?" It's the moon aspect is obviously very big because it's a constant theme with Auri. Same with Denna. There's a constant theme of the moon with both of those characters, and Auri specifically seems to be intimidated by the moon. She doesn't like to come out when the moon is out. She doesn't like, if it's a full moon, she doesn't want to be around. She prefers the clouds covering the moon. She doesn't like to be seen by the moon. There's something about it that intimidates her.
Yeah, this being the first chapter that introduces Auri, man, you just right off the bat, she's a very likable character, just innocent but interesting, and full of these little tidbits that you think Rothfuss may be trying to portray something else. I know I say it all the time, guys, but there's just these little tidbits: the key, the moon fae, the fact that she doesn't like the moon, just a whole lot of different things that, as I read it, I'm just like, man, what is going to happen with her?
Well, I got some good guesses. Like first off, you got, before I go into my guesses, like he says, at my best guess, Auri was only a few years older than me, certainly no more than 20. She dressed in tattered clothes that left her arms and legs bare, was shorter than me by almost a foot. She was thin. Part of this was simply her tiny frame, but there was more to it than that. Her cheeks were hollow and her bare arms waifishly narrow. Her long hair was so fine it trailed her, floating like air, like a cloak, or like air in the clouds. But there's a lot of important things about Auri that I think is going to play huge in book 3. We know that she's a former student. She studied under Mandrake, and she's more than likely a shaper. A lot of that we get from her book. Was it what's the name of her book? Slow Regard to Silent Things.
Yeah, that's it.
Slow Regard to Silent Things. But from that, when she was making the candle, I'll give you a couple lines in here. It was, but underneath there was a secret deep within the hidden heart of things. Mandrake never told her that. She did not think he knew. Auri found that secret for herself. So that gives you that Mandrake was one of her teachers, and she learned things that even he didn't seem to know. And then it goes into...
Is Mandrake a master now?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's the chemistry guy, alchemy, chemistry, alchemy type of guy. But then it was, she knew the true shape of the world. She closed her eyes. She drew her shoulders back. She took a slow and steady breath. There was tension in the air, a weight. There was no wind. She did not speak. The world grew stretched and tight. Auri drew a breath and opened her eyes. Auri was urchin small. Her tiny feet upon the stones were bare. Auri stood, and in the circle of her golden hair she grinned and brought the weight of her desire down full upon the world. And all things shook, and all things knew her will, and all things bent to please her. this is in the part when she's making the candle. It seems to indicate with she knew the true shape of the world, and then all things shook, all things knew her will, all things bent to please her. Seems like she knew some things that Mandrake didn't know. Seems like she's more than likely learned the ability to become a shaper beyond just naming. I think that's what that book is hinting at, is that she's not only a former student, she studied under Mandrake, but she's also a shaper.
Yeah, that's
interesting. I should read it again, because when you read it, when you just read it aloud, I think when I read it, I thought this is all in her own head. She has delusions of grandeur. You know what I mean? Like, because she's in this underground world, which she in her imagination sees all this beauty and desolation. You know, and it's like
she's actually doing something, though.
I mean, I hear you. That's why, again, I should probably read it again. When I read it, it was a long time ago.
Can I interject with you guys? This is up to you guys. I'm in the beginning of that book. I'm juggling. I'm not far into that book yet, so I don't know if there's spoilers. I guess I probably should go ahead and let you guys talk at it at will, but understand that there's a lot of nuances and that I'm not gonna follow you guys, and I think that our listeners definitely go read it, and that's what I'm going to do too. But you see,
yeah, I'm not trying to talk about the whole book. I'm just talking about that one specific part. I think it's pretty clear what that is describing. I think it's pretty crystal clear. Like, that is not just, it's definitely not just in her mind. And you know, the knowing the true shape of the world, and then she just through that, all things shook and all things knew her will and all things bent to please her. That is a very much a naming type of thing, but it was in the midst of shaping the soap, not candles, soap. She was making soap. It was in the midst of shaping soap.
Just to Fitz's point, I don't remember nearly enough about the book. It was so long ago that I read it. The main things I remembered is, like, I like what he did with language. It's very creative in terms of he creates words that don't exist. There's a lot of, like, onomatopoeias and things. It's cool. It's cool for somebody, you know, who likes words and that creativity.
What's an onomatopoeia?
Bang, pop, snap.
Yeah, words that sound like what they are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that I found interesting. It's just, you know, I haven't read it again since I read it so long ago. But yeah, it definitely would be worth it, especially for what we're talking about right now at this moment, to delve a little deeper into who Auri is.
Yeah, and so I think there's a strong likelihood that she's a shaper, which can help explain what cracked her is, if she has knowledge of at such a deep level, because obviously naming is very dangerous. To go into shaping, you would imagine, is at least as dangerous, if not more. And so I think that is probably a partial reason for what cracked her, is the power that she is possessed. And it seems like she has an ability to look at things and understand them. She knows things when she looks at them. She knows their proper place. She knows what they belong to. And I think, like, when she gives Kvothe that key, I think some of those gifts are going to play a role in the book as we move along. I don't think they're just empty gestures like he thinks of his gifts. He's just coming up with fun playing words. She means it. Well, she's not fucking joking.
That's what's really interesting about the nuance in itself, is that she sees these things as it's an interesting balance between something that seems childish and just game and creative and fun seems what she's doing, but then she's very serious, and she ascribes a lot of importance to her game, the little game that they play. So sometimes it seems nonsensical, but and then at the same time, I guess it seems very like serious, and there's a lot of importance assigned to it. So it's interesting to throw that into that character. And who does it also sound like? To me, it sounds like Elodin. Sounds like one of the more powerful people in the world, and he also has these childlike qualities as well. But that's really interesting, man. It's and she reads that way as just a really interesting character, even on just a cursory level. Even if you're just kind of being shallow and not trying to look into her, you can't come out of it and be like, yeah, she's just run of the mill or something. She's clearly interesting. There's more to her.
No, and like she talks about, she saw Loden, and he was looking at the name of the wind.
Yeah,
that's a very good indication of that she has some power. Because like when Kvothe sees Loden before he's called the name of the wind, before he has an understanding, he just sees him staring at shit, and he doesn't understand what's going on. She sees him doing it, and she's like, he was looking at the name of the wind, which is an indication that she's not. She's not just some crazy person. She's also got fucking a lot of power to her as well.
Yeah.
So what you guys are... I'm sorry, Tim. So what you guys are saying is really sparking something inside my head here. If Auri's this way, and it seems like she may have been a candidate for the crookery, and Loden was definitely a person in the crookery, and now he is, well, out, but very powerful. And what you're saying about Auri seems to make sense. The more I think about what she's doing there, could it be that the university itself is actually only bringing people to a certain point, but keeping some occult knowledge hidden? And as people, certain people come close to breaking through that barrier into, from being a namer to being a shaper. Is that, am I right in saying that maybe the university is also doing something nefarious there, where they're actually suppressing that knowledge by keeping people who have the ability to shape the world, keeping them from doing that.
Could be. It could be that they got, information hidden behind the 4-plate door. I don't know. I mean, but yeah, it 100% could be that they have, obviously they have secrets. They have stuff that they're not teaching people at lower levels. Even just like simple things like Kvothe is not able to use certain runes for sigildry when he's at the lower levels. So they have runes and stuff that you have to be at a higher level to be able to access. So yeah, there's definitely different information that they keep from lower level students. So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me that they have more access to more information than others would expect. But I'm not sure on the naming and shaping thing, because it does, outside of Loden, it doesn't seem like any of the other guys really have a full grasp of how naming even works. Like Loden's the only one that seems like he's got, a pretty good grasp on that type of magic.
Okay.
Yeah, so, well, I was just going to say, I was actually quite taken aback, or I guess surprised in this read-through, that she just, it's like, I saw Loden listening for the wind. That kind of surprised me, and I know that, she knows who he is and from other read-throughs, but I forgot that was mentioned like this early. And yeah, that definitely is very meaningful, that when she says he was, listening for the wind, this is a good night for listening for it, or a good spot or something like that. It also jumped out at me when she gave him the key and said it's for unlocking the moon. I thought that was pretty interesting. My first read through, probably didn't think much of it. I thought it was just like their little game, but obviously through reading through the books, there's a lot of mystique and mystery around the moon.
Yeah, Ix locked a piece of the moon away, piece of the name of the moon. And so, Yeah, it could play a part. It could have something to do with opening the lackless door or opening the lackless box or something along those lines. Don't know, but it would definitely not surprise me if the key plays a part. And I think that Auri could play a part in another aspect of the story, like specifically having to do with the 4-plate door and another story that he mentions to Aaron when he was talking to Aaron. I believe it's in the second. Yeah, it's in the second book, and Aaron says he's going to join talking about possibly joining the king's army. And he tells him, "Hey, I'm Kvothe. If you stay and listen, I'll tell you all my stories." And at one part he goes, "I can tell you stories no one has ever heard before. Stories no one will ever hear again. Stories about Florian, how I learned to fight from the Adim. The truth about Princess Ariel. I know how this war started. I know the truth of it. Once you hear that, you won't be so nearly eager to run off and die in fighting in the middle of it. But the truth about Princess Ariel." So there's talk about him rescuing princesses back from Barrow Kings, and I went through in episode 11, I walked through on how the Barrow King could be could be King Koopa that fella dreamed about being behind the 4-plate door. So I think that it could be that the princess he rescues is Ariel. And I think Auri could be Princess Ariel. I think there's a lot of strong indications that Auri could be the Princess Ariel. Like, for one, you have all her mannerisms, her manners. They're very noble-esque. Like, Auri spread out the cloth and began to eat. She tore small pieces from the loaf and chewed them delicately, somehow making the whole process look genteel. And another part that was almost like a curtsy, almost like a tiny dance. And then a formal dinner in some nobleman's hall. She was having tea with the king. She sat with her back straight. What would she do if her tiny kingdom was invaded by a stranger? He made a curiously formal bow in return. So there's all these discussions of her, and she's always very prim and very proper. She doesn't like secondhand clothes. She won't wear clothes that someone else has worn before. She has a lot of her weird qualities are also qualities that could come from growing up noble, growing up as a princess.
And even in, like I said, I'm very early in the silent name of things. She's always talking already about doing things the proper way, and everything has to be done exactly a certain way that's proper. Yeah, that's interesting.
She's very fastidious, and she's very, like, she has this elegance about her, even though she doesn't appear that way, like, because her tattered clothes and all that stuff. But she's very much, she reads that way, and it's very rude when someone talks while they're eating. Like, they sit down, she always has everything placed precisely. There's a whole to-do about everything they do. Everything has, a dialogue about it. She kind of elevates all their discussions. That's really interesting. That really ties in pretty nicely with how I've seen her. I didn't make that connection in the past, but I could see that, her being noble.
There's also two other parts that I think lend a lot of credence to her being Ariel. One, like when he names Auri and Elodin hears it, Elodin is obviously impressed with his naming ability. He's like, "Auri, where'd you come up with that?" And then that's when he was like, it seems like, maybe it wouldn't be a waste of time to teach you.
Yeah, and to teach him to be a namer.
Yeah. So, like, it gives an indication that the name he gave her is close to her actual, her calling name. But another aspect of it is she was possibly raped. There's discussion where it was, she says She knew if you weren't always stepping lightly as a bird, the whole world came apart to crush you, like a house of cards, like a bottle against stones, like a wrist pinned hard beneath a hand with the hot breath smell of wanton wine, which is a very clear indication that she possibly was raped.
That's a hell of an imagery right there.
Yeah. Yeah, so she was possibly raped, and then there's when he rescues the two girls from the fake Rue troop. It was Kren and Elle. And he talks about Kren, he describes as looking like Denna. And then Elle is obviously cracked. She's broken. And she's got long golden hair. And she's got an Auri quality to her. It seems very much that it's an allegory between Denna and Auri.
Well, and she's a daughter of a mayor, right?
Yeah. Which could lead that, that's where I was going. Like, it could lead that Elle is the, Ari's the princess, whereas, Elle was the mayor's daughter. So, and Denna was the, just kind of the, other girl that was raped. But, so there's a strong connection between Auri and Denna and Elle and Kren, down to their looks. But also, when you combine Auri and Elle, Auri plus Elle, Ariel.
So
which is Princess Ariel.
So you've piqued my interest here, Dan. So what else can you tell us about Princess Ariel herself?
Well, that's the unfortunate thing, is that is the only mention of her in the books.
Okay.
Well, what about the Disney movies? I mean, there's a whole thing with Princess Ariel, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but I don't want to ruin book 3 by talking,
okay.
by spelling it out exactly what's going to happen. Obviously, we know what's going to happen, but yeah, you just ruined it for anybody who didn't put put it together.
Okay. Anyway, You've been using the dingle hopper.
What? Huh?
That's
I don't know what that is.
Testing your Disney knowledge there. Also,
yeah, I don't really know.
Ariel's the name of an angel. It may be here nor there.
Yeah. There's other theories. I'll go into more theories on Auri. I'll leave it at that one for this one. But there's theories about her possibly being an angel as well. Not angel Ariel, but an angel. But I think that's probably the strongest connection, that could be a princess, someone from nobility. Maybe the princess he rescues is not actually a princess. Maybe that's just similar to how his stories all get inflated into something else. But I think I think Auri might be from nobility or be a princess, and that she's going to get behind the 4-plate door or something along those lines. And maybe she gets into it from the under thing. She gets in like through a back door, and then he has to get in through the 4-plate door to save her. I think that could be an explanation. Obviously, it's just pure conjecture. I don't have evidence to say that he's definitely that's what's going to happen. But yeah, it could. It very well could be that something happens with her getting behind the 4-plate door, and he has to go in there to rescue her.
I like it, Dan.
That's a good. Out of many of the theories I've heard, that there's a lot of solid connections with that speculation. I could see a lot of it. I mean, there's a lot of reasoning that ties in with a lot.
Fellas, Princess Ariel, Auri, all three, the 4-plate door, all of those. Very well, you could connect all those dots and put them all together, and to come up with something.
So this Princess Ariel, that has a connection to the Bellamy thing we were talking. Baron Bellamy.
Yeah, Bill Bellamy.
Yeah, Bellamy Baron.
So if you do Google it, by the way, Bill Bellamy's son, Baron Bellamy.
Kaboom!
How do you like that? Yeah.
That's
Kaboom
incredible.
is right.
That's incredible.
It is incredible.
Baron Bellamy. Bill Bellamy.
I don't like it at all.
Bill Bellamy, Baron Bellamy. Kaboom.
Bobby Bonilla still being paid by the Mets.
Yep. For a few more years. I looked into it after we got off. For a few more years. Very interesting.
Fantastic.
Very interesting.
Fantastic. That's all I have on that chapter.
Me as well.
So I have one thing, guys. I have a question. So he's sitting with Sim talking about he is going to go try to get his pipes. And he says, I'm going this morning. Maybe
it's the next chapter.
No, he says it
in
this chapter.
No, that's the very beginning of this chapter.
He says it again,
right.
though.
Right,
but
sorry.
It's okay. So I'm confused. Is morning, evening in this world?
No. That's a day. That's a day of the week, like Sunday.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
It's one of the days. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's like Selding.
Morning is like their religious day.
Yes. Okay. That makes more sense.
Yeah, that's one.
I think I knew
that's
that.
One, like, where you see the difference between reading and listening to it. Like, you see it as, capitalized as a day, like a day of the week, versus when you hear it, you can hear it as morning.
Yeah. Okay.
It helps when you read the books on that one because it's spelled differently.
Well, I assumed it was like a MOU.
Fitz not being able to read sometimes gets in the way.
But I listen so well.
Sometimes gets in the way.
I listen so well.
You're such a good.
He's got amazing. I mean, his vocabulary is pretty impressive considering he can't read.
Who are you talking about? Are you talking about Fitz or me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'm saying Fitz not
what,
being
you can't
able to
read either, Tim?
It's impressive.
It does surprise me that he pronounces it ham sandwich instead of Professor Hem, which, by the way, I think we might as well go with ham sandwich because when we say him, while we're also saying him,
it's terrible.
It gets a little bit confusing.
It's very confusing.
Really screwed him, and then when him stuck it to him, he really hemmed him in.
Yeah, it's terrible. You guys, I knew it was hem. So
we
I
can either
pronounce
call
it ham. Ham.
We can call him ham sandwich or pleated pants. We can call him pleated pants. We can go with that one.
We should probably say Master Hem instead of just him and hawn.
Him and hawn.
That makes more
sense. Slacks and the stacks.
Uh-huh.
Fitz loves the word slacks. He loves wearing slacks on Sundays.
Yeah, I got
when he goes morning.
I wear my Sunday's best, my church slacks.
Morning in the morning?
Yes. And I mourn in the mornings.
All right, well, that's all I have.
Enough him and hawn. Let's get on to the next one.
Okay, so chapter 54, A Place to Burn. In this chapter, Will and Sim and Kvothe are on their way to Imre and the Aeolian. They go in. Kvothe meets the owners. He tells Stanchion that he will play for his pipes. He says he will play the Lay of Sir Sabian Trailiard. He explains that it's a duet and very difficult to play. Shortly thereafter, Ambrose comes into the bar. And after a few artists, Kvothe goes on stage and plays. He does a phenomenal job. Denna completes the second half of the duet. And despite a string breaking on his lute, Kvothe completes the song and once again cries like a little bitch. And there's not really much more to this chapter, guys. So we can just move on to the next one. Chapter 55, which Flame and Thunder, which is Kvothe basically looking out in the audience, people starting to cry, and then a thunderous applause.
Yeah, this chapter is amazing. This is like, if you were going to pick of any book I've ever read, like you're going to pick the best description of music, it would be this chapter. And whoever makes a movie out of this book is going to have a hell of a time trying to do justice to this chapter.
The direction is going to have to be on fucking point. I mean,
the song is going to have to be super on point. But I don't even know how you write this song that breaks everybody into tears, get a massive
Yeah.
applause, the string breaks, like everything about it is just like, seems, this is one of those where people are like, the book's always better. Well, this is why the books are always better, because this is impossible. How do you do this and do justice to
Well,
it?
if I can just interject and kind of dissect this thing, maybe just one part. When Kvothe starts explaining the lay of Sir Sabian, and he explains the nuances of the music and how I almost think like it comes in at a half measure, and the backup of the duet, the female side of this comes in on the refrain. The thing is, as he's talking about it, I can't put into words what he was saying, but as he was talking about it, I was envisioning like this round of song, not only but the three parts, his part, the musical part, and the female side of it. Just once again, Rothfuss's descriptions having to do with music just so on point.
Yeah, man.
It's amazing.
The counter harmony, so like I said with the last chapter, or the chapter with the duel, the tension just builds and builds and builds throughout, man. I mean, he layers in these explanations of the song. He builds value in the song. We've heard about this song multiple times. He builds value in the discussion with Stanchion about, how difficult it is. We hear little pieces of how nobody's tried it in a while. Why would that be? And it's too hard to do. He even thinks about maybe I shouldn't do it, because Stanchion kind of tells him, maybe that's not such a good idea. Might be too risky. And that's the biggest thing, man. There's so much that's going to be on the line here, and he picks a song that's terrific for musicians, very ballsy for a musician to even attempt because of how difficult it is. But then it takes a lot of balls to then also, there's nobody in his corner, right? He doesn't have somebody else that he brought with him to sing this song with him. He's just betting someone's going to jump in. And it's a compliment to the place at the same time. Stanchion loves this dude because he's like, well, if this place is the way you say it is, then there should be somebody here that's ready to jump in with me, right? So he says he'll double the refrain. And even just like that little beat of a breath where it's like the refrain is doubled. Is she going to come in? There's like a beat, and we're like,
oh, it's one sentence.
The tension is built to such
a height. He does it in one sentence. He says I have to, if you guys could read it, but he pairs the relief that he would have felt if someone versus the apprehension that or the anxiety that he feels. It's one sentence that really captures his own feeling of angst. That feeling of angst you feel when anything can happen one way or the other. You need this to happen, but this may happen. It's a very real possibility. He captures it in one sentence.
Yeah, he goes, I reached the end of the refrain before Eowyn's first stanza. I struck the first chord hard and waited as the sound of it began to fade without drawing a voice from the audience. I looked calmly out to them, waiting. Every second a greater relief vied with a greater disappointment inside me. Then a voice drifted onto stage, gentle as brushing feathers, singing.
Beautiful.
The whole description of that song is fucking amazing.
Well, but even leading up to that, he may is it there or is it later that he makes a bit of a mistake?
No, that was after she started. He like looked out.
He tried to look out.
He couldn't resist, and then he started to lose it. So he just had to kind of bore down on just the music.
Yeah, dude. It's we are kind of jumping ahead, but man,
we'll just talk. We'll just finish talking about the song, and then we'll go back and cover the rest. But
yeah, it's tremendous, man. It's just a massive amount of, again, tension throughout that continuously builds. And that point that we just talked about is so, I don't want to say rewarding, because you're being torn in both ways, But yeah, man, it's great.
And at that point,
I also like when he gets on the stage, and then he goes from being nervous to now I'm in my environment. And like I get that a lot too. Like the thought of speaking in front of a crowd, or talking to strangers is much more nerve-wracking than when I'm actually in the moment and I'm doing it. Once I'm in the moment, I'm fine, but the lead up to it, I don't like. And he's very similar, but once he gets on stage, he just becomes a fucking performer, and then he's just doing his thing. This is his environment.
Yeah, I think that rings true probably with a lot of entertainers. Just that obviously you have a lot of apprehension going on to perform, but when you get up there and you're in your element, that's a very realistic feeling that he's giving people. Because if you talk to performers, it is you kind of become someone else. You have your apprehensions, you have your doubts and all the self-consciousness, but when you get on stage and you're able to become that person, that role, all that goes away. So yeah, that's it.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, even just the way Dan pointed out. I mean, I've felt that myself in public speaking, where it's the buildup is the worst. You're like sick in a little pit of your stomach, and you're kind of you're nervous, you're a little nerve wracked, and then you just break the silence with like a jump off point with whatever you're about to talk about, and then that just kills it all. But the main thing is, as long as you're prepared and you know what role you're about to play, it doesn't matter. You just go right into it, and then you're fine. Once you start going into it, then you're fine. It's the buildup that's the freaking worst. But yeah, this also speaks to his. It almost seems like it reads like a superpower. Like he gets up there and it's like completely goes away, 100%.
Yeah,
and it is, dude. We've read enough to know his power in this and his confidence that. And we skipped it. We didn't talk about this, but when Simon is talking about how nervous he is for him, and in the previous chapter, it's not just the walk there, how he's nervous. It's when he talks about, hey man, people go up there, they spend that silver talent, and I've seen people that are ridiculously talented. This guy was great. I cried at the end of the song. He didn't get his talent pipes. This person didn't get it. He's like, yeah, you haven't heard me play yet, have you? Knowing that he hasn't heard him play, and he's like, yeah, you'll see what's about to happen. And he's super confident because he knows how good he is.
I also like when he gets up on the stage, he's like, I lit a build, taking my time as I unclasp my battered secondhand loot case and remove my battered secondhand loot. I felt their intention sharpen at my homely sight of it. So
yeah,
like you get that feel of this dude just looking like a poor fucking ragged little kid fucking going up on
just
stage.
Just a step above. A step out of Tarbean, really.
I love that, man, because that also happens. You step in front of everybody and they're all looking at you right now. Suddenly his clothes look like shit. Suddenly he's real cognizant of how young he is, how shitty his loot looks. But again, man, this dude is a performer at all times. He's always about his mystique and his reputation. And he knows they're all looking at him like, look how young this dude is. Look at how shitty, so they're taking in those details, and he lets them like breathe with it for a minute, lets that build a little bit in terms of what their anticipation is,
He writes this so well where like it's just so well written, where he's like, the music came easily out of me, my lute like a second voice. I flicked my fingers and the lute made a third voice as well. I sang in the proud, powerful tones of Savian Draliard, greatest of the Emir. The audience moved under the music like grass against the wind. I sang as Sir Savian. I felt the audience begin to love and fear me. And that's just so fucking well written. It grabs you. And
that's really interesting.
You also get the aspect of it is he's singing a song about the greatest of the Emir, which obviously the Emir are huge.
I love that little love and fear me, because when you are listening, that's an interesting side to it, because when you are listening to music live like that, and this person is taking you on this, trip they're kind of this story, but it's embedded with music, so you're kind of going along with the flow. You're kind of in a vulnerable state because it's where they're going to take you, you know. So that fear is interesting, you know, and he talks about it when the string breaks, where it's like this thing that he's created, they start to come out just a little bit, not fully out, but they start coming out, and you hear little murmurings, and then just boom, goes right back into it and becomes who he once was. That's, dude, and you can't do that. You can't do that if we didn't read those previous chapters where he played the 6-string lute. He is that kid that played the 6-string lute.
It's in his description of being on stage is the allure of the performer is having those people on the string, no pun intended, having those people dangle and you know, being able to be both that guy that you know, can strike and keep them on the line, keep them interested, but also, you know, have them fear him as he's enveloping this character. He is Sabian, and they think he is. That's the allure
he has power over them too. He controls their emotions.
Right. Exactly. It's both at the same time. It's not only him in his personal self knowing that he's leading them on, but also he envelops that character, and he actually at that moment has the power that character had in its own scene.
I mean, he has so much power. Sense. He's able to, you know, completely wreck Simon. I mean, he wrecks it, dude.
Right. Yeah.
And so I like
not to mention the beauty of what he's doing, the beauty of the music, the beauty of the sound of what he's doing. He's encapsulating them not only as the character and people believing what he's that he is that person, but to be able, as we envision or hear in ourselves what he's doing musically, he's encapsulating the people in the beauty of his performance and the how well it's done.
It seems a lot like when he played for the group when he was traveling to the university, when he was like, I was spinning something gossamer and tremulous. It's a very, very similar thing. Like, and we sang, her voice burning silver, my voice an echoing answer. Sabian sang solid, powerful lines like the branches of a rock old oak, all the while Eowyn like a nightingale moving in dark circles around the proud limbs of it. And then 2 verses from the end of the song, the end came. I struck the beginning chord of Sabian's verse, and I heard a piercing sound that pulled me out of the music like a fish dragged from deep water. String broke. And then you get the crowd slowly waking up from this dream state that he had pulled them in, where they also are like a fish out of water all of a sudden. And so you get that feel that his music is different than other people's music. It's not just like, this is a great song, I really appreciate it. Like he pulls them in on a totally different level.
So I'll give a quick aside here to attest to that feeling of pulling a fish out of water. If you've ever been on stage and had someone miss a line, like obviously, or something to that effect, you know, totally screw up or miss a bar if you're doing a rap song or something, it's obvious, and to a performer who's in the middle of that, to have that happen, and it just kind of like rips your guts out.
Yeah, it'd be like in the middle of a concert, the power goes out.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, I mean, it would just completely throw you out of it.
And when he talks about that immersion in the music, I mean, he does it quite well, where he's saying, I was only dimly aware of the audience, dimly aware of the sweat on my body. I was so deeply in the music that I couldn't have told you where it stopped and my blood began. And then the string breaks. So he builds us to that climactic point where it's the entire room is all in basically like his whatever, like in his blood damn near at this point, because everything is one with the song, and the entire room is all just like breathing together. And then it breaks.
The way it ends, it really gives you the magical sense. It's a long part, but I want to read it because I think this is the part that gives you the most magical sense of it. So he says, "In the silence, I felt it all unraveling, the audience waking with the dream unfinished, all my work ruined, wasted, and all the while burning inside me was the song, the song, the song. Without knowing what I did, I set my fingers back to the strings and felt deep into myself, into years before when my hands had deep calluses like stones and my music had come as easy as breathing. Back to the time I had played to make the sound of wind turning a leaf on a lute with 6 strings, and I began to play, slowly, then with greater speed as my hands remembered. I gathered the fraying strands of song and wove them carefully back to what they had been a moment earlier. It was not perfect, no song as complex as Sir Savian can be played perfectly on 6 strings instead of 7, but it was whole, and as I played the audience sighed, stirred, and slowly fell back under the spell that I had made for them. I hardly knew they were there. After a minute I forgot them entirely. My hands danced, they ran, then blurred across the strings as I fought to keep the lute's 2 voices singing with my own. Then, even as I watched them, I forgot them. I forgot everything except finishing the song. The refrain came, and Eowyn sang again. To me, she was not a person or even a voice. She was just part of the song that was burning out of me. And then it was done. Raising my head to look at the room was like breaking the surface of the water for air. I came back into myself, found my hand bleeding and my body covered in sweat. Then the ending of the song struck me like a fist in my chest, as it always does, no matter where or when I listen to it. Like, that takes it to a whole another. At first, it like just the pace of it, like when you're reading it or listening to it, you just feel that pace building, and you feel like him running to the end of the song. And it seems magical, like it is a spell, like there is magical quality to his ability to play music.
Yeah, I almost felt like when he was playing with 6 strings instead of 7, that something was left out. No pun intended there again. But the description is so bare bones, yet it is what he said it was. That even when Denna is singing back to him, she's not even singing to him. It's pouring. The music's pouring out of him because he's so fluid that he doesn't need the full set of strings. He doesn't really need her for the music to be a part of him. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but that's the way it feels to me. Is like, man, it's just all bleeding out of him. He is in charge of this song. He is, pouring it out onto the audience, and everything that they're feeling is unrestricted by him. Go ahead.
It's similar to like his naming. When he's naming, he's kind of lost to the world. Like he's just in the moment. And like when he sees Florian, he sees her name, and he sees the wind, and he understands the moment. He's just lost, enveloped in that moment, and everything is clear to him. It is very similar to this part of when he's playing the music. He's lost to the crowd. He's lost to the other person singing. It is just the song. He's just enveloped by the song, and he's just spinning this spell on this audience. And even him himself is just lost in it. It feels like it is similar to his naming prowess. That's why I think it's so similar. When he's playing music is so similar to his naming that I don't think it's a coincidence. I don't think it's, I think there's something to it. I think his magic, a lot of his magic comes through when he's playing.
Yeah. I agree. Though, and the way it sounds like it couldn't be combined better. It seems like the theme of this song, the story of the song, is also moving to people. I mean, that's at the end. He just lays there or sits there and weeps. And what he's saying is he didn't cry for himself. He didn't cry for well, basically, yeah, he didn't cry for himself. It wasn't about him. It's about Sir Savian and Eowyn. It's about that story.
For love lost and found and lost again at cruel fate and man's folly.
It seems like,
that may be one of my favorite descriptions is him crying like a little bitch. What he's actually crying about, like he's not crying about. If we could read it, but he's not crying for anything, not for him losing his family when he's a kid. not for him, having missed a string or made a mistake or all the different things that, that he should have been crying about, but he's actually a part of that song. Sorry, Tim, go ahead.
Yeah, he's crying for the same reason like Simmons is.
Yeah, no, that's what I was going to say.
For the story.
And that's why when Simmons, like, all embarrassed and is like, don't play this ever again, I didn't know. I didn't know. And he's like, hey, man, don't feel too bad. Same thing happened to me the first time I heard it. But it was kind of interesting when I read that, because to me, when Kvothe heard it, my imagination tells me he heard his father and mother sing it. And they were like one of the, two of the best musicians that could do this song justice. So I can only imagine how that must have sounded. So again, and that's sort of speaks to a lot of things in terms of Kvothe's, standards of musicianship and experience with the song itself. But yeah, I mean, it's the whole thing. I mean, what Rothfuss weaves together in chapters like this is just, it's pretty masterful.
Yeah, his writing level is just so high that you can't really overstate it, like how good he is at developing a scene and pulling you in the same way, Kvothe is pulling in the audience. Rothfuss is doing the same thing in the book. You're getting pulled in.
So how many times do you think, I don't know if Dan, if you possibly know, that he built up the Lay of Sir Savian Trailiard before, this chapter? Because I know it's happened quite a few times that it's this song of, this great, great ballad that most people don't have the ability to even attempt.
Yeah, I mean, he does it a number of times. Obviously, it's probably less than what you imagine, just because we've talked about it so many times.
Yeah.
But it does come up a number of different times.
I mean, it's
he talks about it like when Abinthy left. He talks about it, multiple times after that event. Like he brings it up probably 3, 4, 5, 6 times.
I mean, it's a combination of so many things. He hasn't played for anyone but Auri since before Tarbeen. No,
after Tarbeen, he played for the group. Yeah,
the one you just talked about. Yeah. He also has basically all his money staked here, pretty much. So big gamble there. We've heard him play before without all his strings, so that gets built in here. This is like his he gets reunited with Denna, and there's so many things that if we didn't know these things ahead of time, now we don't actually know this is Denna at this very moment. We find this out, but man, it's just there's so many things that culminate that are layered prior to coming in here, and then he does such a great job building up his discussions with Diok and Stanchion and building up the song and what he's going to be able to do, and then seeing fucking Ambrose, and it's just it's everything, man. It's choosing whether or not to play the song and then making his mind up as soon as he sees Ambrose, like, well, now I don't have a choice. Fuck that guy.
Well, since you mentioned it, Tim, I will bring up this. There's something that bothers me continually through the book, and I've mentioned it before, and that's the coincidences that occur between characters and them finding each other. Because again, him finding Denna in this specific situation and her being the what's her name? Eloine. Her being the one who can play the part of Eloine, and her happening to be there at this exact moment, at the first time that he goes to the Aeolian. And anyway, you guys see what I'm getting at. It's almost like, to me, when he meets Scarpy for the first time, that Abinthy happens upon him, or when Chronicler meets him in the woods. This reoccurring theme where people happen upon each other at just the right time. It as a reader or listener or whatever, it bothers me like it's too coincidental. And I realize the magical side of it, but this
no, but I mean a lot of them like
here.
With Chronicler, it's not a coincidence. It happened because of Bast.
Right, that's explained.
And then Scarpy, it's almost certainly not a coincidence. Is more than likely he was there to wake. He was there specifically to wake Kvothe up. He was there purposely for that purpose. It could be that Dinah,
So saying that
is also there specifically. I don't know, but I think most of the so-called coincidences are not coincidences. I think there's very, very specific reasons, but it could be that Dinah came back looking for Kvothe. She went and did her thing in Annalyn and it didn't work out, and so she went back looking for Kvothe and happened to run into him that night, and it could just be a coincidence as far as that goes, or it could be that she is a part of some group as well. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
Or that there's something else to the coincidences on a whole. Maybe not being part of the Emir or something to that effect, but that I don't know, that this universe has some kind of harmony. But this instance specifically, it makes me bring it up because Scarpy's very easily explained. Chronicler is very easily explained, but again and again, the specific moments that Dinah comes into the scene are not as easy.
It's all Truman
No, they
Show.
seem to be attracted to each other.
It's all the Truman Show. Kvothe is Truman.
Huh. Maybe that.
Yeah.
The world just revolves around them. This
like
is how my world
Truman,
works. All these things happen
the Truman
just for me.
Show plus that M. Night Shyamalan movie, The Village.
M. Night Shyamalama Ding Dong.
Yeah, The Village, when like
with
people
Sinead
are
O'Connor?
living in the old timey world
Yeah.
when they're actually in the current day time. So that's this situation.
Sigourney
Kvothe is
Weaver.
living in our current world, but they've got him just encaged in a massive cage, like the Truman Show, where
It's
he
like
thinks he's living in old timey things, but really there's cars and planes and everything in this world.
It's actually an interesting.
It's like just
point.
a dome at Universal.
Yeah,
it's actually an interesting point, Dan, that I'm going to bring up later when it's relevant. But that M. Night Shyamalan kind of vibe, there's a theory that I'm working on that I'm going to bring up later in the podcast. Look for you guys can look forward to that. You guys can look forward to that.
Yeah, it's going to be great. There's going to be lots of alliteration.
Hey, if nothing else, I'm a showman, so I'll do that.
Look, man, I keep trying to explain this book to you guys, but you guys got to stop grabbing my tits.
You love it.
So, Dan, how did you feel when you found out Stanchion was Ginger? How'd you feel about that?
A Ginger? Yeah. I'm immediately, you realize that the Aeolian is not what it was portrayed to be. It's kind of it's a shithole bar. It's low class, very low class.
So, do you feel the same way about Ilian? That Ilian's a ginger?
He's a ginger too?
Yeah.
That fiery
That's what was
hair.
said. I mean,
that's what he was saying.
Yeah.
Why are we doing this book? Don't like. What is the point of this?
Even what was it? The title of the chapter, man. Place to burn, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's what he's talking about.
It's just gross. It's just
talking about.
I think they're.
I don't understand why he is elevating, soulless gingers and trying to portray them in such a positive light when obviously that's not the case.
I think that you discount their passion, Dan. I think that actually gingers are another form of life here that here on Earth, and Rothfuss is doing a good job portraying that, and that they maybe are almost godlike. Nephilim, if you will, the fiery red hair of the Nephilim.
Yeah, it's very sacrilegious.
So, I was wondering how you guys felt about going back a little bit when they first get there and they're ordering drinks. Sim orders cinnamon mead,
Yes.
and Will calls him a pussy. And then
Girl. But I love Willem here, where it's cinnamon mead. Simmons said without stopping to think, "Girl." Willem said in a vaguely accusatory way and turned to me. "Cider," I said. "Soft cider." "2 girls," he said, and walked off to the bar. Love that. Like, that's 100% like a guy friend's reaction to each other.
Yes. Yeah.
Like in our situation, ordering a fruity cocktail or
well, I love the soft
fruity martini or something.
Not just cider, soft cider. Can you make it a little softer, a little softer, a little more pleasant for me, please? Cider water.
quick aside. I was dating this girl and her friend, and we were doing like a double date with her friend and her friend's boyfriend. And this guy, I'm probably like 21 at the time, and this guy kept talking about how he wanted to get out and drink, like how amped he was to get out and drink. And then we go to the place and like order beer or whatever, and then he orders a Corona, and he asks for grenadine to be in it. And then like he like turns to me, it's like, it's real citrusy, so I like the grenadine. Grenadine helps. Where I was like, dude, you were just like talking like this big game, like you're fucking Mr. Man and fucking gonna drink, and then you're fucking turning to me with the Corona's just a little citrusy and like, it hurts my stomach. I was like, dude, you are the biggest fucking puss ever. What are you talking about? Like, you just blew up every bit of game you were trying to lay down, like to start the night.
I love that he Shirley Temples his Corona.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Yeah. So like, but what I'm getting here, Dan, is if you add a little grenadine to your Corona, it's less citrusy. I like that. I might try that.
You put some cherries in it too.
Oh my god, that's
just the juxtaposition of oh man, I can't wait to drink. I'm gonna get so fucking drunk. Hey, yeah, give me a Corona, but then throw some grenadine in it because it's real citrusy.
You have something for my tummy? You have something for to wash it down with my tummy? I need something to put on.
Fucking dudes, man. But yeah, that's what I think of when he's like, "Girl."
Well, I do. It does definitely hint at they're becoming closer friends. They're very familiar around one another to talk shit like that. Because, that's one thing that you do definitely know. When you see what looks like a group of friends just being complete pricks to one another, that's when you know they're really good friends.
Yeah.
Because if you're being still polite, those are like work friends. They're not actually friends. But when you're being a real prick.
Unless you're Dan, because I guarantee that guy didn't get off asking for grenadine in his Corona. Dan, I'm sure called him a bitch.
I doubt it. I don't believe I said anything. Like, I think I like completely lost respect for him, and like it was like
still came out in your attitude.
There was no chance of us being friends after that moment. Like, you don't go from like, I'm Mr. Billy Badass and want to fucking drink, and then fucking turn to me and like, I need grenadine in my Corona because it's just so citrusy. Like, nah, dude, we ain't gonna be friends after that.
What if
we're not the same type of dude.
What if he turned around and bonged it? He bonged it with the grenadine.
Well, he would have had to have done something like that. Fucking like bonged it and then smashed the glass over his face to fucking make up for it. Then I would have been like, all right, well, dude, if you're smashing glasses over your face, you can fucking put your grenadine in it because you can't handle the citrus Corona.
That's pretty funny. That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
All right. There's some of the other good stuff was, you get the introduction to Dioc and kind of like the charismatic quality of Kvothe, when he offers him to buy a drink and Simon, kind of shits his pants over it and like, dude, man,
Oh yeah.
like this guy fucking threw a guy out for kissing up to him, but like Kvothe is just, he's such a charismatic dude that, Dioc immediately loved him, and then he meets Stanchion immediately loves him.
What's so great about
he's
that
genuine.
is, I was going to say, he's not politicking. He's not trying to glad hand anybody. He's literally just, like you said, he's genuine. He's talking to them like he would talk to them. And he does happen to be a charming dude. So there's that.
And his worldly charm comes out because he's like, Dioc, oh, that means drink. So maybe I can buy you one later. Like you can imagine somebody who comes into a place like that trying to curry favor and says, oh, well, let me buy you a drink, versus Kvothe, who's like, hey, your
name means fucking to drink. Let me buy you a drink.
Yeah.
Here's another one where like he's able to write charismatic so well, where he's like, you're a proud one, aren't you? He said, frankly. I looked around the room. Isn't this the Aeolian? I had heard that this is where pride pays silver and plays golden. I like that, Stanchion said, almost to himself. Plays golden. He slammed his tankard down onto the bar, causing a small geyser of something frothy to erupt from the top. Damn it, boy, I hope you're as good as you seem to think you are. I could use someone else around here with Ilian's fire. He ran a hand through his own red hair to clarify his double meaning. I hope this place is as good as everyone seems to think it is, I said earnestly. I need a place to burn. Like, he's just smooth.
Yeah. And I think that he's not lying when he says, I need a place to perform.
Yeah, for sure. No, he's 100%.
At Kvothe's heart, he is 100% a performer and someone who completely draws off the crowd, off the people around who are the people who watch him do what he does.
And you get the good banter between him and Willem with the sometimes my mouth just starts talking and it takes my mind a little bit to catch up. This happens often, does it? Asked Willem with one of his rare quiet smiles. This banter began to relax me more and more often, I confess, grinning. The good back and forth of their shit talking. It's well written in how realistic it is in guys' relationships, how much they talk shit.
It's a pretty good. That's also a great line from Kvothe about who he is, because that's pretty insightful to like what gets him into a lot of trouble every now and then. Is like he just goes and then kind of has to deal with the repercussions after the fact.
Yeah, and you also get him seeing Ambrose walking in, and you get Simmons' naivety and his, you could just ignore him, Simmons said, sounding surprisingly sober. Just don't rise to his baiting and he'll tire of it soon enough. No, I said seriously, looking at Simmons in the eye. No, he won't. I like Simmons, but he was terribly innocent at times. Once he thinks I'm weak, he'll be on me twice as thick as the day before. I know his type. She's right. I mean, had he not got into it with him in the beginning, it could have been a different story. He could have laid low. But once his shit happened with Fella, you're either all in or you're getting ran over from that point on, because he's not going to let that go.
There was another interesting aspect that I held from their exchange. And that was the look between the two of them that was expressionless. And if you've ever had someone that you truly hated, or just really wanted to fight or something to that effect, where it's almost like you have zero feeling towards that person. It's a hatred that comes from your gut, that you don't want to give them any time of day or any emotion. You're just looking at them because you hate them so much that you're just enveloped in that hatred for them. Anyway, that palpitated from that little scene where they looked at each other, and Kvothe says, I don't even know who looked away first, because it's almost like that wasn't the point. It wasn't important. It's just that between the two of them, there's a vile hatred.
Yeah, the way that read to me, I made a similar note where that's real hatred. The way it was described is just, he's like, whatever. He's trying to, Ambrose is doing his fucking, trying to charm some woman. Then he looks away. His gaze wanders over to their table and their eyes meet. Smile fades. For a long moment, we simply watched each other expressionless. Neither of us smiled mockingly or mouthed small insulting nothings to the other. Nevertheless, all our smoldering enmity was renewed in those few minutes. I cannot say with certainty which of us looked away first. Yeah, I got the same vibe of like, this fucking dude. Like, you know what I mean? Every time you look over, you're just like, oh, fuck this fucking guy. I don't have a lot of enemies, but yeah, I can picture that vibe for sure. And
I've had those moments. It's never had like it was a moment over like, this is my mortal enemy, but I've had moments with like dudes in bars where it was like, that dude's my severe enemy at this moment in my life, where like it's just me, staring at them like, with just dead eyes to them. Just, I want to just smash a fucking bottle in your face, and if you give me the reason, I will. Like, it's just pure hatred, not rational, just pure hatred.
Yeah. Again, so well written. Just really that feeling. we can all identify with that completely. Just so well written.
Yeah, the only other parts I had on it were the very beginning of the chapter, when the two parts where he talks about like how he's walking. Willem and Simon are commenting on how he's walking, just that confident strut that he's got, and they mention Puppet, which we get another mention of Puppet, and they keep layering him in, which is interesting because they bring him up a number of different times, and we don't even meet him until the second book, and we only meet him once.
Yeah, it was very interesting to me. I love the scene with Puppet. I think it's tremendous. I love the character. I love what they did, the back and forth that they have, and how Puppet sort of gives this visual with this sort of back and forth sort of questioning, and I think it's freaking great. I get the feeling that maybe Rothfuss toyed with him being a bigger character, or maybe he's bigger in book 3. I don't know, but almost feel like it didn't work for some reason. Like the pacing didn't work, or however he tried to work him in just didn't work. I don't know.
There's another scene with Puppet that was cut out.
Hey, can I pause you guys for a second, because I'm not I don't remember Puppet. When we're talking about him here, actually, when I read this chapter, I was kind of like, now what is it about Puppet that's so?
Puppet was the guy that was that lives in the library. They have a bet on who disbanded the Emir, him and Willem, and when they go to settle the bet, they both find a book, and they come away tied from the books, and then they go to Puppet, and he settles the bet for him. He's the guy that while he's talking to both, he's doing the marionette, the puppet show, and so he's got a quality very similar to Auri and Elodin, that he's kind of cracked and kind of a savant.
So why is it that Sim so easily recognized that Willem has been talking to him at this point?
Because of how observant Puppet is. And so when he's like, like Willem says, it's the way he's holding himself, breaking his usual thoughtful silence, standing straight, neck unbent, shoulders back. When he steps, his whole foot treads the ground, not just the ball. as if he would run, or the heel as if he would hesitate, he steps solidly down, claiming the piece of ground for his own. It's just that observant quality is very much like Puppet, and being able to, like that whole interaction with Puppet and Kvothe, he's observing Kvothe very, very closely.
By the way, to say that he was tight or coiled like a spring, nothing brings it all home to when he steps, he claims that piece of ground. Like, that kind of makes it all, it's all makes sense at that point, how he's carrying himself. That he's very confident and so confident that when he steps, his whole foot steps onto the ground and claims that piece. I thought that was very, very interesting.
Yeah, it's great. The whole, and it was interesting to see that comment about Puppet, because I feel like without it being a reread, you kind of lose that quality altogether. I mean, it's hinted, but it's hard to like hang on to that and remember that from when you finally get the Puppet. But it very much, he's big on observation, and he's sort of through how he acts, how he sees people, and how he doesn't miss a thing of what's going on. He's so observant. People, like, it seems like Willem here, starting to pick that up in his own life. So it's kind of like lead by example sort of situation with Puppet. But yeah, the chapter's freaking great that he's in. I loved it. I thought it was amazing.
The last parts that I had on this chapter was on the stone bridge. They go, when we came to the stone bridge, the ancient arc of gray stone that spanned the Omethi River between the university and Imre, over 200 feet from one bank to another, and arching more than 60 feet at its peak. Stone Bridge had more stories and legends surrounding it than any other university landmark, which again lends some credence towards the fact that where these places are built could either be the twin cities of Morella and Marilla from the Creation War times, or it could be all part of Bellin, which is also from the Creation War times. It just gives a lot of credence to this is one of those last 7 cities. And then the Spit for Luck, that is something I brought up before. Alodin, when he's leaving the university to go meet up with the mayor, and he meets Alodin on that bridge right before he's about to leave, Alodin is like spit for luck. It's another one of those instances where Alodin seems to have some kind of foresight or knowledge into events of Kvothe's life. He's able to look into Kvothe. I don't think it's all like he's, hiding behind some bushes watching Kvothe. I think it's more than likely that he can kind of read him like a book.
I thought it was something that people did, like everybody throws a coin into the river or throws a coin into the bank or whatever. Everybody spits for luck. Yeah,
I would agree if it was just that one instance though. But then there's also do you know the 7 words to tell a girl that'll make her fall in love, after he's already told Denna the 7 words that she says made her fall for him. And then you have when he's playing cards with Manette and Will, and Manette grills Kvothe like, if you got 5 spades, 5 spades have been laid, whatever, how many spades do you have left in your hand? I can't remember the whole spiel, but Lodin gives him the same exact question during one of the admissions. So there's just multiple times where Lodin is repeating verbatim shit that other people have said to Kvothe. And I don't think he just wrote that numerous examples like that if there's not something to it.
I've written the publisher, and I've been assured that they're cutting out the spitting over the bridge. It's horrible. It shouldn't be in the books. People read that and think it's okay to spit. No, yeah, it's terrible. This is going to spread disease all over the world. It's a horrible thing. No one should be doing it. They shouldn't be doing it in the books. And if somebody reads it, they're going to think it's okay to spit. I don't care where you're spitting. It's bad. You can't do it. Should be illegal. We have to stop this.
What if it's like in your house?
No,
like you
can't
could
do it in
spit
your house.
on your own floor.
Nope.
Yeah, on your own floor.
Not even brushing your teeth. Can't spit. It's horrible.
It's pretty. I think it's lucky.
Well, I think that is invasive. So
that's why they always say you should swallow.
Sometimes mandates.
Never spit. Right? That's where that comes from.
Is that where you're going with that? Is that what you're planning to do with that, Tim?
I didn't really have a plan. Didn't really have one.
Gotta always make it gross. You guys always gotta make it gross. Real immature.
I feel like I've stayed away from the
grossities. I'm going for the grossities? Is that what you said? I'm just going for
taking liberty.
I'm saying we heighten things, more elegance, less spitting.
Yeah. Like dumping loads, man. That's elegant. And then you make it all fucking gross and perverted with your unpoetic shit.
Dumping loads. Jesus.
Yeah.
Is that a euphemism for taking out the trash? Is that what that is?
It's doing laundry.
Oh. Okay.
What else would it be?
What else would it be, Tim?
I don't know. That's why I asked. I wasn't sure.
Yeah. It's the only thing it could be. Yeah, I didn't have anything else. And then the only thing I had on the last chapter, chapter 55, was then waiting. I heard the silence pouring from them. The audience held themselves quiet, tense, and tight, as if the song had burned them worse than flame. Each person held their wounded selves closely, clutching their pain as if it were a precious thing. Then there was a murmur of sobs released and sobs escaping, a sigh of tears, a whisper of bodies slowly becoming no longer still. Then the applause, a roar reaping like flame, like thunder after lightning.
Dan, so like the few women in the audience who couldn't control it or sim, like everybody's like so awestruck of the performance itself, and then somebody's like, woohoo. That's how I envision that sob. Oh man, that's so well written. That even just the applause part of this chapter, just the applause part of the culmination of this was so well written. Just like you can feel it, right?
The tension,
so good.
The tension of the doubt and the anticipation and his nervousness of not knowing did this even work? I don't even know if this worked. To me, it sounded great. But what if the whole thing was just ridiculous? What if it was just a terrible tragedy of the song to just me? You know? I thought that paragraph is huge because it just builds that tension out where it's like, I mean, he thinks he did some great thing, but you don't know until the applause comes.
Yeah.
It's great, man.
Yep.
That limbo, that moment of limbo is fantastic.
Even though it was perfection of perfection, it's still in the artist's mind. It's still like, well, what do you guys think? What do you guys think?
It's so you can't even. I mean, thankfully Ambrose was there. Thankfully Ambrose does this because I mean it just makes the moment that much greater, man. It's one thing to play a beautiful song and to move the audience, but to then do it with that setback, I mean, it's phenomenal. You know, it's that much better. It's Jordan with the flu.
Yeah. The whole performance is so perfect, man. In the eyes of the reader, just everything comes together in this. The defeating of his enemies. You find out that Den is the other side of it. There's so many. Well, and so much.
And it's the recognition of his talent. I mean, he knows it. He's confident in it. We're confident in how much he believes it, and we believe it because we've been there with him, but we haven't been in a room where he's getting his recognition, and he gets it in spades.
It's like popping a really big zit. Do you agree?
Jeez, no.
No.
Finally popping it.
Not at all. What do you mean, finally?
No, but finally popping this big zit. Like, finally, it's the release.
What's the finally? I don't get the. What are you just letting it culminate and build, and then you're like, it's ready, it's ripe. Yes. You're a fucking weirdo.
All this time we've been waiting for Kvothe to get off, for him to show everyone just how pussy his musical talent is.
This is gross.
This is the worst analogy and comparison of all time.
Dude, I'll stick with the Jordan with the flu comparison. Is much more poignant than a freaking pussy zit. Yeah. What in the hell?
I think you'll come to see that it doesn't work out well for Kvothe. He's an anti-hero.
How about Mary Lou Retton with didn't she have like an injury and still did like a great gymnast thing?
No, that was a different girl.
Not the same thing.
A different girl.
Not the same thing anyway.
Oh, you had a broken string.
Shannon Tweed? No, not Shannon Tweed.
The girl twisted her ankle and then fucking nailed the landing with a busted ankle to win a gold medal. Like when the U.S. the gold medal. I don't remember her name, but yeah.
Shannon something.
Well, next week we're going to meet Dinah again. Find out that she's the one that was singing Aelwyn's part, and
finally
she is dating Savoy at the time. And then we're gonna get into, he goes through another admissions and goes back to Kilvin and pays him off, and Kilvin learns about him playing music down at the Aeolian. There is a slight chance we might get to the creation of Jackass.
Oh, nice.
The great song about Ambrose, but that would be about as far as we would get.
Pizzle.
So we got some good ones with bringing back Dinah into the fold. Will obviously be the big aspect of what we talk about.
At this point in the story is where things start getting emotional for me, where I'm just having this duality of Kvothe, don't do that and do this, and all the time questioning Kvothe's decisions. Really tremendous for me here.
I love it.
Yeah,
it's great.
Very reminiscent of Tommy Boy and the love story between him and the girl. Like when he takes her out on the boat, like that suave, charismatic, smooth interaction between them.
You probably, yep, just like that.
Yeah, it's exactly like Tommy Boy.
Hey, Tubbo, you ain't moving.
Man, I wish there was some wind. Fuck yeah. Sailboat in the middle of a pond with no wind. Fucking classic movie. Yeah, that's another one. If you haven't seen Tommy Boy, you're gone. Boom. Out of here.
I've seen Tommy. I definitely had seen Tommy Boy in the theater more than any movie. It's not even close. When that was in the theater, I think I went like 9 times. I mean,
yeah, we were probably in high school when that came out. So like that was right in that wheelhouse where that's the perfect mentality to be in for that movie.
Yes,
fucking hilarious.
We used to. Back when they had the $1 movie, you could go
exactly movies
for $1.50 and then sneak back and forth between movies all day long. We saw that movie like 3 times in one day every weekend.
It was playing
amongst 3 other movies.
It was playing at the same time as Major Payne.
Yeah,
I did the same exact thing. I did the same exact thing you just described at Movies 8.
If he's in there, he ain't happy.
You can do that. You can still do that at movies. You can like go in, and then once you're in, you're in.
You're in.
It's been a while since I've been to a movie. However,
these little nuggets of wisdom that
now every time I take my my nephew to go see a movie, like as we're leaving, I'm always like, you just like go into one of these other theaters and watch another one.
Well, it's the drive-in mentality.
We're well raised on that. Knock out 2 while we're here.
Yeah, the drive-in mentality. Go for 3. You know?
No, I would never do that because that is wrong. It is wrong to pay for one movie and see two. But you could totally do it. If you've never done it, you could totally do it. It's wrong. You shouldn't do it, but you can totally do it. And you'll get away with it. And you'll never be caught.
I used to do it. I used to do it in high school a lot. Quite a bit. Spend the whole Sunday watching movies.
All right. Well, hey, guys, go do that this weekend and then come back and see us again next week. Thanks for joining us.
Go to the theater this weekend. Like in
Los Angeles?
Hopefully by the time you hear this is like 2022. So
I was going to say.
You can actually do that.
Turn on Netflix.
Like, you're trying to go see a movie now in the middle of this shit, and you're probably shit out of luck with your options.
What you do is you get a projector and fill up a tub of water and just project it onto the water. Do that with like a pond, or a puddle of rain. Matches the mood.
Yeah.
You can weep as you watch the film in water. Just sob.
Until it all falls.
Just sob throughout the whole film.
All right. I'm glad we ended on such a strong note for you guys. And we just really fucking just boom. Came out like a fucking rocket ship at the end. Just fucking really super entertaining shit where now they're just like, I can't wait to move on to the next one. If episode 13 ended this fucking amazingly, think of how great episode 14 is going to be.
Hey. Chapter 56, Den is back in the fold.
Metheglin, man.
Just remember that. Let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to be drinking Metheglin while we do this shit, too.
Let's do it.
I'd love to. But you know what? Do me a favor. A little grenadine. It's a little citrusy.
Yeah.
Just take the edge off.
That's all Metheglin is. It's just straight grenadine. Fucking drink of kings. All right, go get you a Corona. Put a little grenadine in it. Get that citrus fucking feeling out, so your tummy's okay, and get ready for next week.
All right, night, guys.
Will do.
Peace out.
Peace out.